Chapter 4140. Even Yixian was amazed by how thick-skinned these three old fellows were. Yixian had done plenty of extortion and blackmail, but every time he would take advantage of the situation. No matter how vicious the extortion was, at least on the surface, he could not do without a dignified reason and excuse. But these three old fellows were good. They directly skipped this part of the process. Just a moment ago, they were still arguing about whose grandson-in-law Yixian was. Now, before the key issue was settled, they actually joined forces and started extorting him in front of everyone. They were so righteous and did not hide anything. There was no one else like them. Fortunately, he still had a few vials of level 15 and level 16 liquid in his hands. After taking them out, he finally managed to coax the three old fellows into beaming with joy. For the time being, they were satisfied. Hugging the vials of level 15 and level 16 liquid as if they were hugging a mountain of gold, they casually greeted Yixian. After saying that they would see each other again, they happily slipped away. Sorry, these three old fellows are too shameless. Yes or no, we promise that we will not bring them out in the future. Forget it, we should go back first. We have to go back and keep an eye on them. If they swallow the level 15 and level 16 liquid together, that will be troublesome. After the three old fellows slipped away, the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru looked at Yixian awkwardly and apologetically. But before they could say anything, the purplish warbler suddenly thought of something and said one last sentence. The three girls' expressions changed, and they immediately turned around and left in a hurry. Yixian was stunned for a few seconds. Only then did black lines appear on his forehead. Don't say these three old fellows are really capable of doing such a thing. The shameless extortion of the three old fellows was just an interlude, and it soon came to an end. However, after their commotion, the original atmosphere at the central domain leaders' table on the huge platform had changed. A group of immortal realm old monsters with different thoughts were thinking about how to regain the previous atmosphere and take advantage of this opportunity to talk. Toixian had a good chat about the matter of the level 20 liquid. Yixian had actually seen this point. Of course, he would not give them such an opportunity again. Otherwise, it would be difficult to escape later. Just as he was about to get up and find an excuse to leave first and return to the Sky River Star, Yixian's heart suddenly moved. He reflexively looked to the right of the void, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He reached out and waved in that direction and said, "Come, come." In an instant, all the guests at the 1,000 tables on the huge platform were stunned. They subconsciously followed the direction of his wave and also looked to the right of the void. As for the guests who were originally in that direction, whether it was the starry sky powerhouses sitting cross-legged in the void of the universe or the people of the Federation in the various battleships, after being slightly stunned, they all became excited in an instant. They remembered what had happened to the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru. Although it had now been proven that Yixian had actually had an affair with these three girls for a long time, at that time, Yixian had indeed casually waved his hand, and the three girls got up and left. In the end, they unexpectedly obtained an amazing opportunity, and directly jumped from the cosmic light realm to the Star Lord realm. This scene was the consensus of billions of people at that time, and the scene in front of them was so similar to the scene at that time. Could it be that another great opportunity was about to appear? Could it be that Star Lord Yi had taken a fancy to another girl this time? At the thought of this, all the people who happened to be far to the right of the void suddenly stood up. It didn't matter if it was not a girl. Anyway, Star Lord Yi did not directly say that he must have a girl. Regardless of the consequences, they should just go and get some benefits first. If Yixian knew that this group of people was actually thinking this at the moment, he would probably find a piece of tofu and kill himself on the spot. The reason why there was a look of surprise on his face, and the reason why he waved to the right of the void and said, "Come," was actually very simple. It was because at that moment, he clearly felt the aura of the Devouring avatar. That was originally one of his avatars. Although with Yixian's current cultivation and strength, the mental connection between them would be severed if they were too far away. However, when they were within 100 million miles, the connection between the original body and the avatar could be restored instantly. Right now, he had this kind of feeling in his heart, which meant that the Devouring avatar had already arrived. It had returned from the human race's 10 absolute celestial palaces territory to the technology dynasty territory, and was rushing towards the Sky River sector. It was less than 100 million miles away from him. 100 million miles distance was a distance that Yi Xian, with his current cultivation and strength of the Sector Lord realm, could reach in the time it takes to eat a meal if he rushed at full speed. The Devouring Avatar's cultivation and strength were originally stronger than Yi Xian's. If there were no accidents, it was very likely that it was already at the universe grade by now. After all, he was a spirit avatar. The heavenly devouring avatar directly devoured all kinds of energy when cultivating, so it was naturally faster than Yi Xian. Under such circumstances, with his speed, he could reach it in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea at most. In the cosmic void to the right, a large number of extremely excited starry sky powerhouses, who thought that good fortune had arrived, quickly fell into an awkward situation after swarming out. This was because they realized that although Yi Xian was looking in their direction, his focus was clearly not on them. Not on them, but at the end of the void further behind them. Depressed, this group of people also turned around to look. Not long after, in the cosmic void ahead of them, a figure stepped on the void and came over. His clothes were as white as snow, and his appearance was exactly the same as Star Lord Yi, who was on the huge platform outside the atmosphere of Sky River Planet. Seeing this figure appear, the expression of the immortal old monster Gong Huaji, who represented the human race's 10 absolute celestial palaces, changed slightly, but soon he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He naturally recognized who this person was at a glance. Wasn't this the invincible war god who had stirred up chaos in the territory of the cultivation camp controlled by the Tenju Heavenly Palace, but had been living very comfortably all this time? In fact, as this figure came closer and closer, not only him but many people also recognized him. In an instant, exclamations resounded in this part of the void. This is the invincible war god? Star-Lord Ye's devouring avatar? One of the 7 peerless evildoers? That's right, it's the invincible war god who charged into the cultivation camp alone, stirring up chaos in the 10 absolute celestial palaces, but the more he fought, the braver he became. It's said that at that time, he wasn't even a powerful figure of Qianquan. Who would have thought that now? He's already at the peak of Sector Lord Level 9. Chapter 41-41. Sector Lord Level 9 Perfection. This was the current cultivation level of the Devouring Avatar. In less than 2 years it had actually grown to such a height. Even Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. As expected of the innate Devouring Avatar, it grew so quickly. It didn't even need to cultivate, nor did it need any luck. It could devour and refine all kinds of energy for itself. This was also the reason why he was alone in the cultivation camp. While devouring energy, he had to be careful of the 10 extreme celestial palaces' pursuit. Otherwise, if he could devour without any restraints, Yi Xian's innate devouring avatar's cultivation level would have reached the immortal realm. It wasn't anything strange. As for the fact that the devouring avatar's cultivation level was stronger than the original body, Yi Xian wasn't worried at all. His devouring avatar was different from the devouring avatar in the current cultivation system. In the current world, in the 3 main dimensions of the universe, whether it was the human race or the other races, including the Tianji race and the automaton race, devouring avatars had all kinds of restrictions. Their cultivation level couldn't be stronger than the original body. Even the space for growth was limited by the original body's various talents and innate conditions. However, Yi Xian's innate devouring avatar was completely different. Not only was its future growth not limited by Yi Xian's original body, even if its cultivation level was stronger than the original body, there wouldn't be any problems. The original body was the original body, and the devouring avatar was the original body. They were basically one. It was as if Yi Xian had made a copy of himself and split it out. Of course, if he could split it out, he could naturally take it back at any time. And now that the devouring avatar had returned, the opportunity for the original body and the avatar to merge into one was obviously right in front of him. You have returned? I have returned. Separated by millions of li, Yi Xian and the devouring avatar's eyes met. The two of them had the same thought and said the same words. Then they smiled faintly and leaped up at the same time, charging into the sky. Shio! Swish! The two figures were dressed differently, but their appearances were exactly the same. However, there was a slight difference in their cultivation levels. One was a level 3 sector lord while the other was a level 9 sector lord. At this moment they transformed into two streaks of light, shooting through the space above the atmosphere of Sky River Star. After a few whistling sounds they finally collided. Come together, become one. The devourer treasured body and Yixian's figure overlapped. This scene was witnessed by countless Federation citizens and cosmic experts in the surrounding void. In the end, the two figures became the only one. The invincible avatar had finally returned. Boom! Boom! Just as the devouring treasured body returned to Yixian's body, shocking waves surged within his body. Clear, thunderous roars rang out one after another. With the return of his doppelganger, Yixian's cultivation aura began to rise rapidly. This was expected. The doppelganger was a part of the complete self. Even if the doppelganger's cultivation level was weaker than that of the original self, when the doppelganger returned, the original self's cultivation level would increase as a result. Furthermore, the doppelganger's cultivation level now surpassed that of the original self. Once it returned, the impact on the original self's cultivation level would naturally be greater. This scene was within the expectations of countless Federation citizens and cosmic experts in the surrounding void. Even Yixian himself had been mentally prepared for this. However, no one could predict the level of the original self's cultivation level that would soar due to the doppelganger's return. Even Yixian himself had no way of guessing. However, at this moment, as soon as he heard the roars and explosions in his body, his expression changed instantly. The speed of the increase in his cultivation level was too fast. At this moment, he felt as if there was a boundless ocean that was stirring up waves of shocking waves that were roaring towards him. Just the arrival of the first wave caused Yixian's cultivation level to break through. In his mind, the familiar system notification sounded without suspense. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 4 Sector Lord Realm. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 4 Sector Lord Realm. Soon after, the second wave of shock enveloped Yixian's body and mind in a single breath. In less than half an instant, a second familiar system notification sounded out. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 5 Sector Lord Realm. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 5 Sector Lord Realm. This wasn't the end. Before Yixian could recover from his shock, the third wave of stormy waves roared over. For the third time, a familiar system notification sounded out in his mind. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 6 Sector Lord Realm. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 6 Sector Lord Realm. In a short span of 3 breaths, Yixian's cultivation level had broken through by 3 small levels. Furthermore, his cultivation technique and physical body had broken through at the same time. This scene was too shocking and was witnessed by countless Federation citizens and experts in the surrounding space. In an instant, countless cries of envy rang out and reverberated throughout the area. Heavens, in 3 breaths, he broke through by 3 small levels. Furthermore, it was a breakthrough in the Sector Lord realm. How is he going to live? I don't know about others, but this old man has nothing left to live for. Compared to Star Lord Yi, this old man has lived for so many years for nothing. Clone. Even a clone can cause the main body to break through. What kind of clone is this? How did he refine it? This is simply defying common sense. Too shocking. In a short span of time, he broke through by 3 small levels. How much is Star Lord Yi going to use this cheat, to what extent? That invincible war god clone is at the peak of the Sector Lord realm. Can't be that the main body has broken through to such a level, right? That's too shocking. If that's really the case, this old man is going to doubt his life. At this moment, Yixian's entire mind was completely immersed in the thrill of breaking through rapidly. It was simply indescribable and made him feel as though he was floating like an immortal. Everything was still going on. The system notification in Yixian's mind was still ringing non-stop. Every breath he took was a small breakthrough. Finally, after the 6th breath, the final system notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 9 Sector Lord Realm Peak. Ding! Congratulations, host. Ancient Dongshu formula has broken through. Current realm. Level 9 Sector Lord Realm Peak. Level 9 Sector Lord Realm Peak? Wasn't this half-step universe realm? Chapter 41-42. With the return of the devouring clone, the strength of Yi Xian's original body rose instantly. In just 6 breaths of time, he had broken through 6 small ranks. Now, his cultivation had risen from the 3rd level of the Sector Lord Realm to the 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm Perfection stage. One had to know that he was merely a domain lord a few days ago. A few days ago, he had crossed a large realm from the Domain Lord Realm to the 3rd level of the Sector Lord Realm. Now, in the blink of an eye, he had crossed more than half a realm and directly charged into the 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm Perfection stage. Such a scene made countless experts in the surrounding void beat their chests and stamp their feet as they started to doubt their lives. Yi Xian opened his eyes at this moment. There was clearly a trace of excitement that flashed through his eyes. 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm? It was really too fast. Moreover, his current strength was far from what it was now previously, when his original body was at the 3rd level of the Sector Lord Realm. The strength of his ancient ape demon bloodline true body was at the 4th level of the Sector Lord Realm. Once he executed the 9 devil ape transformation and reached the 5th transformation, he would instantly reach the 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm. Every transformation would raise his strength by 1 small rank. Now that his original body had broken through again and finally reached the 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm. After activating the ancient ape demon bloodline, Yi Xian's 3-headed, 6-armed ancient ape demon bloodline could directly enter the universe realm and reach the 1st level of the universe realm. He would have the strength to cross a large rank. Transformation. Once he entered the 5th transformation, his peak strength would reach the 6th level of the universe realm. This was already the peak of the middle stage of the universe realm. He was only 4 small ranks away from the immortal realm. In fact, if Yi Xian had the various treasures and powerful bloodline abilities in his hands, he would even have the strength to fight against an immortal marquis. As for the immortal realm, although he didn't dare to say that he was invincible, ordinary immortal realm old monsters would only be able to face Yi Xian's various powerful bloodlines. Bloodlines and abilities would definitely only be able to flee. They were far from being his match. However, this was not enough to satisfy Yi Xian. The moment he opened his eyes, he made a new decision. Taking advantage of the fact that the return of the devouring treasured body had led to a great increase in the cultivation of his original body, which had not yet fully recovered, he made another small breakthrough. The current him, his cultivation method and physical body were all at the peak of Sector Lord Realm level 9. He had reached the bottleneck of consuming the level 19 liquid. If one consumed a vial of level 19 liquid and successfully broke through, one's cultivation base and physical body would advance to the universe grade level 1. Although there was only a small difference between the 9th level of the Sector Lord Realm and the 1st level of the universe realm, they belonged to 2 different realms. Once he successfully broke through, the increase in Yi Xian's combat strength would definitely be considerable. It was very significant. Since he had already reached this stage, he would have to consume a bottle of level 19 liquid to break through the bottleneck sooner or later. It was better to do it sooner rather than later. Now was the time. Swish! Swish, swish, swish. After making his decision, Yi Xian did not hesitate any longer. Following a series of faint sounds, he took out a large amount of cultivation resources from the undying world in his body. Any of them would cause a commotion and cause a frenzy in the outside world. Innate chilling spirit liquid, dark furnace lotion, sky centipede poison and hell ant liquid refined by the Shenong exceptional flame, 2 drops of all evil origin liquid, 10 pieces of level 9 colored star core origin, a large amount of multi-pupil sense crystals below the 8 pupil level, and so on. Finally, there was a vial of level 19 liquid. He had decided to devour all the cultivation resources in one go, and absorb the energy within them. His only request was to ensure that this breakthrough would definitely succeed. Furthermore, considering that this breakthrough would require him to consume a vial of gene cultivation fluid after reaching the peak of the Great Realm, and break through the shackles of his body's potential, it might take a longer time. Therefore, to ensure his safety, Yi Xian waved his hand and took out the Shenong cauldron. Swish! The Shenong cauldron, which turned into a ray of light, rushed out of Yi Xian's body and stretched across the void. However, it was not in its complete form. It was too big, like a giant superstar. Right now, the void was filled with all kinds of starships, and the void was not wide. Yixian controlled the Shinong cauldron to have a diameter of about 10,000 feet. Then, with a flash of his body, he appeared at the mouth of the Shinong cauldron, which was shrouded in 9-colored fog. He sat down cross-legged, his figure faintly discernible. He floated in the fog at the mouth of the cauldron. After that, he took out the undying world in his body and suspended it in front of Yixian. The top-grade resources that followed him to the mouth of the Shinong cauldron all turned into rays of light with a wave of his hand and rushed into Yixian's mouth. After doing all this, he waved his hand again. From the inner space of the Shinong cauldron, a giant bird's leg that was over 1,000 feet long flew out and landed in Yixian's hand. This bird's leg was obtained from the remains of a large number of primordial supreme beings and primordial supreme beings that were kept in a sealed cave at the bottom of a volcano in the central region of the space inside the cauldron. It had been roasted by the Shinong 7-colored flames and was already golden and dripping with oil. It emitted streaks of 7-colored light, and its smell was extremely fragrant. This was definitely a delicacy. Yixian took it out and roasted it, but it was not for the sake of tasting it. Instead, it was to absorb the pure energy in this primordial supreme being's leg. Therefore, the way he ate now was not very flattering. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was wolfing down the food. In just a dozen breaths, the entire golden bird's leg, which was over 1,000 feet long, had been completely eaten. This scene happened so fast that by the time the countless people of the Federation Army and the starry sky experts in the surrounding void came to their senses, Yixian had already gobbled up the entire golden bird's leg, leaving not a single piece of meat behind. In the surrounding void, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard one after another, rising and falling one after another like a tide. There were also a lot of whispers. Did you see that? The bird's leg in Star Master Ye's hand is so big. Just one leg is over 1,000 feet long. I wonder what kind of bird it was cut off from. It's roasted golden and dripping with oil. It looks delicious. It's more than delicious. And it smells so good. I've never smelled anything so fragrant in my life. I'm drooling. Star Master Yi is so stingy. We came to the Sky River planet to observe the ceremony. We are all guests. If he has such a good thing, he should share it with us. Star Master Yi, why are you hiding in the mouth of the giant cauldron and eating alone? It's as if you are afraid that we will steal it. Don't be so infuriating. In the end, even the 3 old men of the Shenyuan family, the Duanmu family, and the Zhao family rushed out and shouted, "My dear grandson-in-law, please show some mercy." Yes. This thing is obviously good stuff. I've never eaten it before. Just leave a few mouthfuls. Chapter 41-43. Seeing Yixian wolfing down a 300-meter-long golden bird leg in less than a dozen breaths of time, the sound of saliva slurping could be heard. It was like a tide that rose and fell one after another, resounding throughout the entire space. This was the precious blood and flesh of a supreme bird of the primordial era, and it had been roasted by the Shinong 7-colored flame. It was not an exaggeration to say that it would be difficult to find a second one in the 3 main planes of the universe. The fragrance was so alluring that even old man Shenyuan and the other 2 old guys could not help but jump out and ask Yixian to keep some of his food. In the end, the purplish warbler Duanmu Xiaocha and Zhao Qianru were dragged back to the starships of their respective families. It was unlikely that they would be released to embarrass themselves again in the near future. After such an uproar, all the people of the Federation and the experts in space finally came back to themselves. Their attention shifted from the alluring fragrance of the bird's leg that was spreading in this corner of the void to Yixian. Then, some of the people who were enlightened changed their expressions crazily, and exclamations echoed again and again. What's going on? What is Star Master Yi doing? Other than the golden bird's leg that was full of pure energy just now, he has taken out so many top-level training resources. The only ones that I can recognize are the innate chilling spiritual liquid, the heavenly centipede venom, and the hellish ant liquid. Judging from their auras, they are all top-level goods. Ah! Of course. With Star Master Ye's wealth, how could he be interested in normal goods? Look, the 10-star core origins are just like that. They are all level 9 and 9-colored. I've never seen any of them in my entire life, but I've seen 10 of them today. My eyes have been opened. Those crystals are rare in the third universe. They seem to be the multi-pupil thought crystals, a specialty of the devilish space zone in the first universe. Heavens, so many multi-pupil thought crystals below 8 pupils. What is he trying to do? Fellow cultivator Gong, among the top-level resources that young friend you took out, is that the netherworld furnace lotion? Heavens, there are actually 2 drops of all evil origin elixir. Where did he get them? Did he steal one of the netherworld furnaces? If I remember correctly, Star-Lord Yi seemed to have swallowed a bottle of level 19 liquid along with these top-grade resources. It can't be, right? Another breakthrough? He even swallowed the level 19 elixir. He's clearly trying to break through to the universe grade. Poof! I'm about to spit out blood. I've just jumped from Sector Lord level 3 to Sector Lord level 9. And now I'm about to break through a bottleneck. Are they not going to let me live? At this moment, Yixian was no longer able to sense the scene in the outside world that was already bustling with noise. After swallowing all the cultivation resources, he sat cross-legged at the mouth of the Shenong cauldron. His figure was faintly discernible in the 9-colored fog. He had already entered a state of cultivation where he forgot about everything around him. His qi and blood were surging in his body. As the terrifying medicinal effects of the level 19 elixir and all the other top-grade resources spread, Yixian's body started to boil immediately. His precious blood surged like a river, and his cultivation power surged in his meridians. There was also an unprecedented sound of chains rattling. This time a huge chain appeared in his body again. Its surface was still covered with all kinds of mysterious and obscure runes. This huge chain was also an important potential shackle chain on the path of human evolution. It was like a chasm that was extremely difficult to cross. If one succeeded in tearing it apart, they would be able to cross this chasm and become a universe-grade powerhouse in one leap. However, if one failed, this huge potential shackle chain would very likely become even stronger. It would be even more difficult to break through again. This was the drawback of the gene cultivation fluid's evolution path. It was very worrying. It was fast, but once it failed, there would be adverse side effects. Whoosh, whoosh. After an unknown amount of time, the raging energy in Yixian's body surged like a tide. The tube of level 19 elixir had completely dissolved, and so had the other top-grade resources, such as the all-evil origin fluid. Everything converged into a large river of energy within Yixian's body that surged out. Wherever it passed, countless smaller chains of potential shackles were instantly torn apart. Although it was painful, there was also an indescribable feeling of satisfaction. It was extremely wonderful. Time slowly passed and everything continued. This majestic river of energy finally rushed in front of the largest shackle that had appeared this time, and immediately began to crazily attack it again and again. In an instant, Yixian, who was sitting cross-legged at the entrance of Shenong's cauldron, emitted a boundless glow from all the 1.08 billion pores on his body. He looked like a deity that had descended to Earth. The countless starry sky powerhouses and Federation citizens in the surrounding void were stunned. Everyone's hearts were in their throats at this moment. No one knew if he could still succeed in breaking through this time. Another 2 hours passed and this huge shackle chain was finally completely broken. In an instant, Yixian felt his entire body become lighter. The power and blood in his body surged even faster and more wildly. Even the sea of consciousness in his mind, which represented his cultivation power, expanded tremendously in an instant. When Yixian's eyes lit up as he opened his eyes, the anticipated system notification sounded out in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the ancient void technique. Current realm. Universe grade level 1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through the physical body and blood boundary. Current realm. Universe grade level 1. A breakthrough. After pouring in all sorts of rare treasures, as well as the golden roasted leg of a primordial almighty supreme bird, and a tube of level 19 elixir and other top-grade cultivation resources, Yixian had finally broken through again. His main body's cultivation base and physical body had improved further, and was pushed to the universe grade level 1 without any suspense. Although the difference between the universe grade level 1 and the universe grade level 9 was only a small level, they were 2 different major realms. Now that Yixian had successfully broken through, The increase in his combat power was definitely pleasantly surprising and significant. Previously, when his main body strength had been at the universe grade level 9, he had activated the three-headed, six-armed ancient demon ape bloodline and his strength had soared again to the universe grade level 1. If he used the 9 demon ape transformations again and reached the 5th transformation, he would instantly reach the combat power of a universe grade level 6. Every transformation would increase his strength by a small level. Now Yixian's main body had broken through a small level again, and officially entered the universe grade. After activating the ancient demon ape bloodline, his cultivation base would reach the universe grade level 2 in the state of the ancient demon ape. Once he entered the 5th transformation of the ancient demon ape, his peak combat power would reach the universe grade level 7. Chapter 41-44. This time Yixian had used a large amount of top-notch cultivation resources to take advantage of the return of the devouring treasured body clone. He had consumed a vial of level 19 liquid in an attempt to break through to the universe grade. In the end, after a few hours of tempering and cleansing of his spirit and body, he had finally succeeded in breaking through to the universe grade. Currently, his original body was a universe grade 1 grade under normal circumstances. His cultivation method and physical body were synchronized, and he cultivated both magic and martial arts. Once he activated the ancient demon ape bloodline and entered the three-headed, six-armed demon ape true body state, he would be able to use the 5th transformation of the 9 demon ape transformations bloodline ability. His cultivation base would soar to the universe grade 7 grade in one fell swoop. He would only be 3 grades away from becoming an immortal grade old freak. Yixian was already satisfied with such a great harvest in a short period of time. However, what surprised him was that the fortune this time was far from over. As Yixian opened his eyes and was about to get up in excitement, a familiar system notification sounded in his mind once again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The level of the demon core has increased. Current level. Level 9. Level 9? This breakthrough had actually caused the mind source core in his sea of consciousness to also transform and evolve. Yixian felt even more delighted as this thought flashed through his mind. In retrospect, the mind source core in his sea of consciousness seemed to have transformed and evolved into a level 8 source core a long time ago. However, there had been no activity after that, and there had never been any signs of it transforming and evolving into a level 9 source core. However, this time he had been completely unprepared. Everything had happened naturally and inexplicably. This made him speechless. As his heart surged, he suppressed the thought of immediately getting up and ending this breakthrough. Instead, he continued to sit in a lotus position at the mouth of the farmer god cauldron, which was shrouded in a dense 9-colored fog. He returned to his inner state and his consciousness entered his sea of consciousness. Previously, there had been a total of 9 objects suspended above Yixian's sea of consciousness. In the middle were the Rai-D seal and the farmer god cauldron. Surrounding the Rai-D seal and the farmer god cauldron were 7 small objects. The mind source core, the void essence crystal, the fallen sky bow, the black gold dragon scale, the underworld claw, the small immemorial devil ape, and the simple tortoiseshell that had just entered. Now that the devouring treasure devouring body clone had returned, there was another object suspended above his sea of consciousness. It was the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda that had been given to the devouring treasured body clone to take away. A total of 10 treasures formed 2 different rings in the air above his sea of awareness, of his sea of his consciousness, the ancient desolate dragon cauldron, and the pagoda. Of the inheritance of the pagoda of the 3 treasures. Of the ancient of 3 treasures of treasures. And on the edge of his sea of consciousness, there were still 7 treasures, which represented Yixian's various top bloodlines and skills. Apart from the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda, Yixian had also given the devouring treasured void ladle, which was a first-level star lord, as well as the phantom of a desolate dragon, which had been of great help to Yixian in the early stages of his growth. In addition, there was also the weeping soul bloodhorn, which had been of great help to him during the early stages of his growth. For some reason, all 3 of them had been stored in the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda. Of course, although the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda was a relic of the era, like the farmer god cauldron and the underworld cauldron, Yixian had completely refined it. Because of his cultivation level, he couldn't fully utilize the full power of the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda. However, the treasures and battle pets stored in the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda, could be summoned or used at any time. Yi Xian probed the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda with his consciousness and soon found something. The Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was still the same as before. However, even though Yi Xian was now an old monster of the universe and his cultivation was far from what it used to be, when he saw the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn again, he still had a feeling that he was unable to contend against it. The Weeping Soul Blood Ape was a supreme of the Desolate era on the same level as the Void Tortoise, the Golden Dragon, and the Desolate Yaksha. The Weeping Soul Bloodhorn it left behind was obviously not simple. If nothing unexpected happened, it could probably be used by Yi Xian until he became a supreme of the Desolate era. As for the true body that Yi Xian had personally reconstructed, the Void Ladle, who was previously only at the Star Lord level, had actually grown to the immortal realm. This caused Yi Xian to be rather shocked. It was no wonder that the devouring doppelganger could do so well in the 10 ultimate celestial palace of the human cultivation camp alone. The former even sent out an immortal state monster, but still failed to capture him. Presumably, the Void Ladle, whose strength had been restored to the immortal state, must have contributed a lot at some critical juncture. As for the demonic dragon, which was just a wisp of Yi Xian's soul and had not been able to reform its true form in the present world, it originally had the strength of a supreme of the Desolate era. However, because it was just a wisp of Yi Xian's soul, its strength was greatly weakened every time it attacked. In the end, it was destined to vanish into thin air. However, the devouring doppelganger sent it into the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda before the energy of the wisp of Yi Xian's soul was exhausted. After being replenished by the energy accumulated in the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda, it was full of energy again. After scanning the ancient desolate inheritance pagoda with his soul, Yi Xian quickly retreated and turned to the mind source core, which was hovering among the 7 small objects in the periphery of his mind. After this transformation, the mind source core, which had evolved to a level 9 mind source core, had become smaller in size. It was now only the size of a thumb, and its entire body was purple gold. Its color was incomparably deep, as if there was a purple gold vortex inside that could suck in one's mind. There was no doubt that the mind source core had transformed once again. The demon's mind power contained within it had changed from a level 8 mind power to a level 9 mind power. After this transformation, Yi Xian's power would definitely increase greatly when he activated the demon core's mind power techniques, secret techniques, and mystic abilities. Furthermore, following this transformation of the mind source core, all the mind power techniques, secret techniques, and mystic abilities that Yi Xian had mastered had also leveled up accordingly. The offensive mind power secret techniques such as the Annihilation Spear and the Annihilation Vortex, as well as the auxiliary mind power secret techniques, such as the Absolute Concussion and the Perfect Concussion, had already been high level, so there had been no changes this time. The Mind Crush and Mind Charm secret techniques were the same. When the Demon Core had transformed to a level 8 Mind Source Core, they had already been high-level secret techniques. As for the Mind Lightning technique and the Mind Reversal technique, they had been mid-level mystic abilities. This time they had finally leveled up and become high-level mystic abilities. Lastly, there was the Slave Seal technique, which had undergone an unexpected transformation not too long ago. Previously, it had only been an elementary transformation, so it could be used on most non-living things except demons. Of course, ordinary humans and creatures of other races with no cultivation base would still be affected, even if they didn't have a mind source core. Chapter 41-45. The power of the intermediate variant slave imprint had a monumental increase on the basis of the primary variant. Its significance was extraordinary. Besides the demons, the primary variant slave imprint could also be used on most non-living things, including ordinary humans and creatures of other races without any cultivation base. Even if they did not have a mind source core in their heads, they could still be affected by the primary variant slave imprint and be subdued as a slave. As for the intermediate variant slave seal, apart from demons and most non-living beings, it could also subdue non-demon beings with cultivation. It wasn't just limited to ordinary people without cultivation. Of course, the success rate was definitely a problem, and it was related to the user's cultivation. Close. For example, Yi Xian was currently a universe grade. If he used the intermediate variant slave imprint on someone with a cultivation base below the universe grade, he would most likely succeed. However, If the cultivation base of the target was at the immortal grade or even the marquis grade, there was no doubt that the possibility of success would be very low. Perhaps the target would be in an abnormal state, such as being seriously injured and awaiting death. This kind of limitation was reasonable. Although it was a pity, Yi Xian was not disappointed. At the very least, after the intermediate variant, he would be able to use the slave imprint at a high frequency in the future. Thinking back to everything that had happened after he had entered the Black Mosquito ship, how would Yi Xian have been able to achieve what he had today if he hadn't obtained the slave imprint? He would have perished long ago when he had been imprisoned in the Black Mosquito ship. Previously, every time the mind source core in Yi Xian's Sea of Consciousness transformed and evolved, it would unlock a new mind power skill, secret technique, or mystic ability. The primary variant of his slave imprint had unexpectedly appeared when his source core had evolved to level 8. This time, following the evolution of his level 8 source core into a level 9 source core, Yi Xian had once again obtained a new mind power mystic ability. At this moment, when he was checking the mental power skills, secret arts, and divine abilities that he had mastered, such as the spiritual lightning skill and the mutated slave seal, the newly obtained information about the mental power divine abilities had been successfully analyzed by the devouring system in his body and stored in the system's data database. There were also some mysterious specks of light floating above Yi Xian's Sea of Consciousness that diffused from the grade 9 source core and entered his Sea of Consciousness. This made Yi Xian feel as if he had been enlightened. In a short moment, he completely understood the essence of the spiritual power ability he had just obtained. This was a divine ability that was powered by spiritual energy, and it was called the spiritual black hole. When one heard the name of this mystic ability, one could roughly analyze its might. This mystic ability was supported by the level 9 mind power contained within the level 9 source core in Yi Xian's Sea of Consciousness. Once it was unleashed, it would form a terrifying black hole-like attack surface in the void outside the body. Compared to Yi Xian's destructive vortex and other mind power secret techniques, it was many times more powerful. Of course, this would consume a lot of energy. Based on the total amount of mind power stored in the grade 9 source core in Yi Xian's head, it would only be enough for him to use this technique twice. After using it twice, he would fall into a predicament where his mind power was about to be depleted. He would be in a weak state and have a splitting headache. Therefore, even though he was very much looking forward to using this mystic ability, it could be said that his heart was thumping with excitement. He really wanted to try out its might on the spot and see whether his spiritual black hole mystic ability was stronger or weaker when compared to the great spiritual black hole mystic ability. However, when he considered the fact that it would consume a lot of energy, he forcefully suppressed this impulse in the end. Using it once would deplete half of the grade 9 source core in his Sea of Consciousness. This was simply too wasteful. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. After calming down, Yi Xian gradually calmed down from his excitement. After his main consciousness withdrew from his knowledge sea, his eyes opened. A blazing light burst out from the bottom of his eyes. His entire temperament seemed to have gone through another round of rebirth. It was obvious that he was very different from before. This was what it should be like. This breakthrough had not only allowed his strength to break through the bottleneck of the Realm Lord grade, but it had also allowed him to step into the Universe grade and become a universe-old monster. The spiritual source core in his Sea of Consciousness had once again undergone a magnificent transformation and evolved to a grade 9 source core. The various spiritual power techniques, secret techniques, and mystic abilities that he had mastered had also increased in level and power. With so many aspects of evolution and metamorphosis, it was only natural that there would be some changes in his temperament. Whoosh! After standing up, Yi Xian took a step forward and his figure had already floated from the mouth of the farmer god cauldron to the void of the universe. Then, with a wave of his hand, the farmer god cauldron was stored in the undying world within his body. At this point, this breakthrough had come to a perfect end. Everything had come to an end. The entire process fell into the eyes of countless Federation citizens and Starry Sky powerhouses. At this moment, when they saw Yi Xian wave his hand and put away the farmer god cauldron, ending this magnificent breakthrough, a wave of exclamations and exclamations came from all over the void. He broke through. He actually succeeded in breaking through again. A few hours ago, he was still at the perfect Realm Lord grade 9, but now he's already at the Universe grade level 1. Since when did the universe-old monster become so worthless? In just a few hours one was born in front of everyone. This makes people speechless. Comparisons are odious. If it were anyone else, they would need at least thousands of years of accumulation to break through from the perfect realm lord grade 9 to the universe grade. Here he is easily breaking through in a few hours. The key is that before this, he had just broken through 6 small grades consecutively. Oh right, a few days ago he broke through several realms in one fell swoop. Under such continuous breakthroughs, he actually dared to break through the bottleneck of a realm grade 9 and succeeded. Oh, this old man is really starting to doubt life this time. Ha ha ha. Star Master Yi, congratulations. Little friend Yi has successfully broken through to the universe grade and is much closer to the undying grade. With your speed of ascension, this old man is a little doubtful that the next time I see you, I'll have to call you senior. Not bad. Little friend Yi's talent is so strong that this old man has never seen before. If we really don't meet for a year and a half with your monstrous talent, the next time we meet, you might really change and become an undying grade marquis, ha ha ha. Accompanied by the waves of exclamations and exclamations, 2 to 3 million miles away in the atmosphere of Sky River Planet, on the huge platform that was used as the venue for the banquet, the elephant fox Martin Long Shantang Gong Huaji, and the other 30 undying great old monsters all soared up. Chapter 41-46. With the return of the devouring clone, Yixian had gained a lot. His main body's cultivation base had synchronized with the devouring clones and reached the peak of the 9th level of the Sector Lord realm. Then, he had swallowed a bottle of level 19 liquid and a large amount of top-notch resources such as the all-evil origin liquid. He had a breakthrough. He had entered the universe grade 1 and become a universe-old monster. Even his mind source core, which had been dormant for a long time, had evolved into a grade 9 monster core because of this opportunity, as well as after a long period of precipitation and accumulation. Because of this, the elementary variant slave seal had been upgraded to an intermediate variant, and he had even obtained another powerful spiritual power ability, Spiritual Black Hole. The return of an avatar had brought such great benefits to the original body. This caused Yixian to sigh with emotion, but at the same time he couldn't help but look forward to it. He had a total of 2 clones. The devouring clone had returned, but the other electronic clone had not. If nothing unexpected happened, the electronic doppelganger was still in the headquarters of the machinery race. At that time, in the source of all evil, the machinery race's patriarch D-Air had sent a few mechanical beasts to devour the rune chains of the netherworld furnace. Yixian had taken advantage of this opportunity to let the electronic doppelganger possess him. One of them had taken advantage of this opportunity to enter the headquarters of the machine race. Ever since then they had lost contact until now. When he had left, the electronic clone's cultivation base had been at the 1st level of the cosmic light grade. Now that so much time had passed, he did not know how much its cultivation base had increased, and whether it had had other fortuitous encounters like the devouring clone. These thoughts flashed through his mind but were quickly discarded by Yixian. After his seclusion had ended and he had successfully entered the universe grade, he had become a new universe-old monster. The many guests on the huge platform outside the atmosphere of the Sky River Star had all gotten up and leaped into the void. They had all come to congratulate him. Yixian smiled bitterly and returned the greeting with cupped hands. After exchanging pleasantries, he returned to the huge platform and sat down. After exchanging pleasantries with the elephant fox Martin Long Shantang Gong Huaji, and more than 20 other immortal great old monsters and universe-old monsters from other powers, he finally left and hurriedly returned to the interior of the Sky River Star. After entering the Star Lord's mansion on the main continent, he immediately shut his door and went into hiding. The banquet in the void lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. This was originally a celebration of the Heavenly River Planet, but in the end, the main character went into hiding and refused to see any guests. The high-level representatives of the various major forces had no choice but to settle for the next best thing. In the end, they exchanged toasts with each other, and it was a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. 3 days later, the countless starships in the void outside the atmosphere of the Heavenly River Star gradually dispersed. Except for a small number of them, who either entered the Heavenly River Star or went directly to the depths of the domain of the graveyard to try to excavate star cores, most of the other starships returned to where they had come from. in the residents, especially the Hell Ant race, Space Rat race, Giant Ferocious race, and other races from the first universe, as well as the top 10 races from the second universe. The relationship between these races, the human race, and the myriad Luo Federation was quite subtle, so it wasn't suitable for them to stay in the third universe for long. Soon, the Sky River sector regained its former tranquility. Moreover, with the end of the Heavenly River Star incident, the various conflicts that had been going on in the three universes in the past 2 years seemed to have come to an end. The dispute between the races of the second universe and the myriad Luo Federation was temporarily not mentioned because the current owner of the Great Providence had been determined to be Yixian of the human race. Both sides kept silent about this matter. The two camps of the human race, which had a slight grudge because of the recent major events, were even more so. The relationship between the Imperial Court and the Heavenly Palace was getting more and more harmonious. Even the myriad Luo Federation of the first universe no longer clamored to drive the four-race alliance, which was led by the demons, out of the first universe. The demons had disappeared directly. Ever since the second-generation ancestor had taken them away with a ray of light during the Great Change on the Demon Emperor planet, this race hadn't shown up in public again. Obviously, they were hibernating in the ancestral land of the demons, conserving their strength. The other three powerful races of the four-race alliance, the Hell Ant race, the Space Mouse race, and the Giant Ferocious race, were the same. The three races were firmly united and didn't take the initiative to provoke the myriad Luo Federation formed by the other races. They lived in harmony with each other. Even the Cage star field, which had suddenly appeared and replaced the entire Demon Emperor star field, had suddenly appeared. From time to time, fierce roars and beastly roars could be heard, indicating that in that star field, the fierce caged beasts and the masters of the starry sky who had entered the star field in search of fortune were fighting each other. The battle was still quite fierce, but at least the disturbance didn't spread to the outside world. In addition, since the migration of the Tianji clan, they hadn't shown up again. Suddenly, the three main planes of the starry skies were filled with peace and tranquility. It was as if the golden age of peace had arrived. However, this kind of peace and prosperity on the surface was obviously just an illusion, just like the temporary calm before the storm. In the three universe planes, almost all the high-level members of the top races and forces had fallen into silence recently, because at their level, their divine perception and premonition were extremely sharp. As long as they were immortal old monsters, recently all of them had a kind of premonition. It was as if something shocking was about to happen. Thinking of the Cage star field that had just appeared in the demon domain of the first universe not long ago, many people subconsciously trembled. Although they had long known that the great wilderness world, which had been completely destroyed in the legendary battle in the distant desolate era, would most likely appear again in the near future. Fully descend in the present world, however, when this day really came, they couldn't help but tremble in fear. That was the legendary great wilderness world. All kinds of ancient strange birds and fierce beasts were incomparably powerful. If a desolate era almighty existence jumped out, if its cultivation strength was at its peak, it could directly sweep across the three main planes of the starry sky. It could be said that the full descent of the great wilderness world was definitely a real disaster for the three main planes of the starry sky. Even the top races and forces didn't know how many of them could survive. Yixian also had this kind of worry, and he deeply felt the same. Chapter 41-47. The Domain of Shadow Devil in the Second Universe. The Domain of Shadow Devil used to be the territory of the Een Demon clan in the second universe. It was located in a remote area. The Een Demon race wasn't very popular among the various races of the second universe. Before the various races of the second universe had left the myriad Luo Federation, the Een Demon race was one of the races that had been excluded by the myriad Luo Federation. Because of this, in the vast territory of the second universe, the domain of Shadow Devil, the territory of the Een Demon clan, didn't have many people. Even the other races in the second universe rarely came here. Ever since the Een Devil clan was tricked by the Netherworld young master that Yixian had transformed into, and even the Een nest in their ancestral grounds had been blown into a spatial vortex that was quite large, it was even more difficult to see any signs of life in this Shadow Devil star region. In this past year, it was almost like a remote and desolate land. Only the space vortex formed after the Een nest in the ancestral land of the Een Demon clan was blown up still existed. Moreover, it was expanding at a very slow speed. A few days ago, When the Heavenly River Star was holding a grand ceremony, more than 100 fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters sailed into the domain of Shadow Devil in the second universe. Moreover, they didn't pass by this place. After entering the domain of Shadow Devil, they stopped. It seemed that they didn't plan to leave this place in a short time. These 100 fortresses were all occupied by the members of the Een Demon clan. Although the Een nest in the Een Demon clan's ancestral land had been destroyed, the Een Demon clan hadn't been exterminated. Apart from the crazy Een Emperor who was still alive and had caused quite a commotion in the first universe, there were still several tens of thousands of Een Demon clan members who were still wandering outside. They were the group of Een demons who were abducted by Yixian using the identity of the young master of the Netherworld. After arriving in the Nether Turtle's star field, the identity of the young master of the Netherworld was exposed, and they were separated from Yixian. Their leader was the elder of the Een Demon clan, Een Chi. Although the chief of the Een Demon clan, Een Emperor, had come out of seclusion and his strength had skyrocketed, he was tricked by the young master of the Netherworld at the last moment of his breakthrough. Although he had the Een Demon body, he had some problems with his brain. After hearing about the actions of the Netherworld young master, not only did his hatred overflow to the heavens, he also hated Yixian's identity. Even the tens of thousands of clansmen, who were led by the Netherworld young master, were carried out by the Netherworld young master and swaggered around the second universe in a large palanquin, shouting slogans that shook the heavens. They were hated by the Een Emperor. He said that they had disgraced the Een Demon clan. Because of that, he said that one day, he would kill all of them personally to clean up the clan. Since then, tens of thousands of the members of the Een Demon clan had become stray dogs in the first universe. They couldn't return to their homes, and they couldn't recognize their patriarchs. They had to wander outside, and they had long faded away from the main stage of the first universe. It had been more than half a year since they were last mentioned. Under the lead of Elder Een Chi, they quietly returned to the Shadow Devil's star zone. When they were forced to wander in the void, these tens of thousands of their clansmen were squeezed into a big fortress that was 100,000 meters in diameter. But now, after half a year, Een Chi and the tens of thousands of his clansmen brought back more than 100 big fortresses. However, these hundreds of big fortresses seemed to be damaged. They didn't have the same design. Although they were all big fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters, there were some minor differences. Obviously, most of these big fortresses didn't come from the right way. They were like a ragtag army that had been put together one after another. And it was the truth. In the past half a year, Een Chi and his tens of thousands of Een demons had no home to return to. In fact, they hadn't done anything good. It was already nice to hear that they were wandering in the void. It would be even worse if they were exposed. This old man had been a space pirate for more than half a year with tens of thousands of his clansmen. Now that he had returned to the Shadow Devil star zone with more than 100 space fortresses, he had robbed them one after another in the past half a year. Although they didn't come from the right way, and the situation of these space fortresses was a bit embarrassing, more or less damaged, they were still more than 100 space fortresses. Also, they weren't small fortresses with a diameter of 50,000 meters, but large space fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters. Now that they were gathered together, their combat power was quite impressive. After entering the Shadow Devil star zone, these space fortresses drove straight to the space turbulence vortex formed by the explosion of the Een nest. They lined up on the right side of the vortex. In the central control room on the top floor of the flagship, Een Chi was standing in front of a 3D holographic screen. The screen was showing the space turbulence vortex that was 10,000 square kilometers wide. His eyes glittering, Een Chi suddenly waved his hand. Begin. Hum. Hum hum. Following his order, the space fortresses shook almost at the same time. Then a high-frequency buzzing sound came from all of them. It was obviously the sound of the space compactor being fully activated. Apparently, Een 7's purpose in returning to the domain of Shadow Devil was to repair this space disruption vortex with the help of his more than 100 star fortresses and space bridging tools. This place used to be the Een nest of the Shadow Devil clan, but it became like this because of the explosion. If it was repaired, it was possible that the Een nest of the Shadow Devil clan could reappear. Although over 100 star fortresses weren't a lot, this space turbulence whirlpool wasn't very vast either. It was only about 10,000 miles in radius. If there were no accidents, it would take 2 to 3 months of continuous repair, and the void turbulence vortex would be completely repaired. Although it was a bit difficult, it was all worth it. Enchi did this partly because he was physically and mentally exhausted after leading tens of thousands of his clansmen to wander outside. He wanted a stable place to settle down. On the other hand, he hoped to obtain the forgiveness of the patriarch, Emperor, by repairing the nest. After all, the identity of the young master of the Netherworld clan had been separated. He was one of the 7 freaks, the embodiment of the great providence of the current era. Even the top 10 races of the second universe, the races of the first universe, the 2 camps of the human race, and the 10,000 Net Federation had been tormented by his other identities. Now that the past had been forgotten, how could Emperor still not be able to see past it? In Enchi's opinion, although he didn't know where the patriarch Emperor was, he hadn't heard any news from any area of the 3 major planes. He didn't hear the familiar angry roar toward the young master of the Netherworld clan. Chapter 41-48. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, the hundreds of space fortresses that Enchi brought didn't stop for a single moment. Day and night, the space compactor was fully activated, and they were trying their best to repair the space turbulence vortex in front of them. This was a very boring thing to do, and the continuous high-frequency buzzing sounds were even more disturbing. However, only 3 days had passed, and it would take at least 2 months to completely repair this turbulent space vortex that was tens of thousands of miles in circumference. It was still early. Whether it was Enchi or the tens of thousands of demons in the hundreds of space fortresses, they were all very patient and weren't in a hurry. They were already different from when they were abducted by Yixian as the young master of the Netherworld from the nest in the ancestral land. In the past half a year, they had experienced the annihilation of their clan, the destruction of the nest in the ancestral land, and the roaring of their clan leader everywhere. After a series of changes, the tens of thousands of demons had completely matured in terms of temperament. Even Enchi had become much calmer compared to half a year ago, when he was slightly impetuous. In fact, the experience of roaming in the void and secretly working as space pirates for almost a year had also greatly improved the cultivation and strength of the tens of thousands of demons. Every time the space pirates attacked, it would definitely be a fierce battle. This was originally a way for the team to grow quickly. However, unless they were forced into a corner, no one would make such a choice. At this very moment, looking at the hundreds of starry sky fortresses on his left and right sides of the void, he recalled the hardships and struggles that the tens of thousands of people in the starry sky fortresses had gone through in the past half a year. Enchi suddenly felt extremely confident. He believed that as long as they could repair the nest in the ancestral land, as long as they could obtain the forgiveness of the clan leader, Emperor, then once the clan leader returned, the experienced and iron-blooded subordinates under his command would definitely be able to show the glory of the demon clan once again. Boom. Hong long long. Just as Enchi was lamenting, in the universe void outside the Central Territory's flagship fortress, there suddenly came a series of earth-shattering explosions without any warning, one after another, continuous and incessant. It was obvious that something big had happened. Even the void was in chaos at this moment. As a result, the huge fortress under Enchi's feet was like a small boat at the tip of a huge wave, rocking violently. In fact, it was not only the flagship fortress that Enchi was in, but also the other hundreds of starry sky fortresses around it. Faced with such a chaotic situation, the spaceships on the hundreds of giant fortresses had automatically stopped working. The low high-frequency buzzing sound that had lasted for 3 whole days had completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by the continuous rumbling of thunder. What happened? What the hell happened? After being stunned for a short while, Enchi immediately jumped up and roared, "I'm just using the space compactor to repair this void turbulence whirlpool. How could such an accident happen? With such a huge commotion, is the entire void going to collapse? Damn it, what the hell happened? Hong long long. Hong long." Following Enchi's furious roar, the thunderous roar that had been going on all this while suddenly became even louder. Then, before Enchi could react, the flagship fortress that he was in seemed to be sucked in by an inexplicable force that was so huge that it could not resist, and it suddenly shot forward. The other hundreds of starry sky fortresses were in the same situation. At this moment, without exception, All of them were involuntarily rushing toward the void turbulence whirlpool in front of them. Their speed was so fast that it was far beyond the limit of this starry sky fortress with a diameter of 100,000 meters. It was even 2 to 3 times the limit that it could reach. More than 3 times. At this moment, if someone were to stand in the endless void and look towards this area, they would be able to clearly see this shocking scene in its entirety. In front of them, the void turbulence vortex that was originally only 10,000 miles in radius suddenly began to expand at a terrifying speed, as if it was radiating outwards. In just a short breath of time, this turbulent space vortex, which originally only had a radius of 10,000 miles, had expanded to a radius of 1,000,000 miles. At first glance, it was as if this turbulent space vortex was a mouth in the void of the universe. Originally, it was tightly shut, with only a line of lips visible. But now this mouth suddenly opened wide in anger. The terrifying suction force that appeared in an instant directly pulled Enrich and his tens of thousands of demon clansmen, as well as the hundreds of starry sky fortresses, into the depths of this black hole-like mouth. In half a breath's time they had completely disappeared. Oh my God, what the hell happened? At this moment a lone figure shot over from afar. The aura that emanated from his body had actually reached the Sector Lord realm. This figure was tall and ferocious. It was clearly the blood-green nether puppet of the Demon clan's patriarch, Emperor. To be precise, this blood-green nether puppet was actually the patriarch of the Demon clan, Emperor. The last time Emperor appeared was in the Origin of All Evil Star region. At that time he had almost died. At the last moment, in order to save his life, he had completely fused with the blood-green nether puppet beside him. Since then he had always been like this. He was neither a human nor a ghost. He had both the heavenly demon body and the nether puppet body. He was simply a freak. However, this kind of complete fusion with the nether puppet also caused his cultivation strength to soar greatly. After finding a place to cultivate and recover from his injuries, the current Emperor was already a supreme expert of the Sector Lord realm. The reason why he suddenly returned to the Shadow Devil Star region of the Second Universe was that, like Enrich, he had also received news from the Heavenly River Star of the Third Universe, and knew the true identity of young Master Netherworld. When he thought of the fact that the other party was actually one of the 7 great freaks and was also the owner of the great fortune of the current era, he felt that the Emperor's heart was in chaos. Even the various clans of the First Universe, the top 10 clans of the Second Universe, as well as the human race and the myriad Luo Federation, who had been tormented miserably by his other identities, had all given up their past grudges under the pressure of the current situation in the 3 main starry sky planes. They were all trying to be on good terms with Yishin. Emperor felt an incomparable sense of desolation in his heart. With the current situation of the other party, let alone taking revenge and venting his anger, as a mere Sector Lord like him, as soon as he appeared, there was no need for the other party to personally take action. Those immortal realm old freaks of the top clans and forces who wanted to curry favor with him, hoping to repair their relationship, would jump at the first moment. Chapter 41-49. Boom! Rumble. Earth-shaking rumbles resounded endlessly. Originally, it was only a radius of 10,000 miles, but due to the sudden appearance of the unforeseen event, it instantly radiated outwards. Within a breath's time it had reached a radius of 1,000,000 miles, and now it was still spreading outwards. It was like a collapsing black hole, occupying a larger and larger area of the universe's void. However, compared to before, where it had expanded 10 times in less than a breath's time, the space vortex was now spreading outwards. Although it was still spreading outwards, its speed was clearly much slower. Even so, because the commotion was too great, the entire universe was still affected by it. Within an area with a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, the void was trembling slightly. 20 to 30 million miles away, the Emperor, the patriarch of the Demon clan, who had completely fused with the blood-green nether puppet, stood in the universe's void with a gloomy expression. He seemed to be thinking about something, and he softly muttered, "It seems that a new unforeseen event is about to happen in this space vortex. Why does it feel like the Demon Emperor star field in the core area of the Demon Dweller star field in the First Universe? Why does it feel like a world that doesn't belong here is about to descend? In addition, I clearly saw more than 100 starry sky fortresses here." Listening to the unique high-frequency humming sound, It should be the space compactor installed on the big fortresses that is repairing this void turbulence vortex? Could it be that idiot Enchi? Otherwise, the nest was originally located in a remote and barren area in the first universe's plane. Now that the nest is gone, this star field has no value at all. Who else would spend so much effort to use 100 starry sky fortresses to repair this space vortex? Hey! After saying this, Emperor's eyes flashed, and the murderous aura in his body instantly spread out again. He gnashed his teeth and said hatefully, "Idiots! A bunch of idiots! Using the space compaction device to repair a space vortex with a radius of 10,000 miles actually caused such a big mess. You can't accomplish anything, but you're more likely to spoil things. It's just that." After roaring a few times, the anger in Emperor's heart seemed to have more or less dissipated, and the feeling of desolation and loneliness that he had felt recently surged in his heart once again. After a short moment of silence, he suddenly sighed faintly. Forget it. Even though I didn't do a good job and messed it up, these little bastards still have the heart. Possible. I can't ignore them. But all of this still depends on their own luck. If they really can't enter this turbulent void vortex, then this Emperor can't do anything. After saying that, Emperor's eyes flashed once again, and he raised his head to look at the black hole-like chaotic space vortex that was still expanding in the distance. At that very moment, because it had expanded too quickly and was too vast, the original chaotic space vortex had completely disappeared. What appeared in front of him was a black hole-like void. Moreover, the edge of the black hole was still pushing forward, as if it would continue forever without end. His realm was ordinary, but this was obviously impossible. The largest black hole in the three starry skies main planes was only a few tens of millions of kilometers in diameter, and even that had taken several tens of thousands of years to slowly form. As for this place, it was merely formed by the sudden change of a void turbulence vortex. In a short period of time, no matter how vast the final area was, it should be able to stabilize very soon if nothing unexpected happened. After muttering to himself for a while, Emperor finally suppressed the thought of turning around and leaving. He still stood in the distant void, calmly waiting. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. When he seemed to have sensed something, he opened his eyes from his cross-legged meditation and looked at the distant void in front of him. The scene that entered his eyes left him completely dumbfounded, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His perception wasn't wrong. The black hole that had been expanding had indeed stopped, and it was no longer expanding. Moreover, its interior had clearly stabilized. However, in just half a day, the black hole in front of him had expanded to a diameter of 30 to 40 million kilometers. This could definitely be considered a large black hole, and it would be the same in any of the three starry skies main planes. However, this wasn't much. What truly shocked Emperor was that after the vast black hole stopped expanding and completely stabilized, the ancient starry sky that appeared within it was an ancient starry sky. That's right, inside the black hole was clearly an ancient starry sky, and it emitted an endless and heavy desolate aura. Without a doubt, this ancient starry sky was the same as the cage world in the center of the demon dweller starfield in the first universe. It was also part of the desolate era. Originally, it wasn't on this plane drifting in some chaotic space-time. But now, because of the sudden change in the nest vortex, this corner of the desolate world had revealed a part of it. Now, a corner of it was revealed, and it was connected to the domain of Shadow Devil in this second universe. This scene was too shocking. A corner of the ancient desolate world had suddenly appeared without any warning. Although it didn't descend completely like the cage world in the first universe, it was no different from opening a path to this corner of the ancient desolate world in the second universe's Shadow Devil starfield. And Emperor was close enough to see the entire process. At this time he was completely stunned. The corner of the desolate world in front of him was clearly extremely deep, and he couldn't see the end of it. But even at the periphery of the black hole, there were large amounts of desolate beasts' remains that he had never seen before. For example, the golden lion vulture, the blue-eyed golden eagle, the nine-tailed coxcomb snake, the three-headed bone snake, the red phosphorus twin-tailed snake, the blood moon demonic wolf, the dark purple star wolf, the yellow lightning wolf. There were also amethyst behemoths, five-colored divine oxen, gold moon true toads, blood jade spiders, six-winged heavenly demonic insects, blue-eyed golden-eyed beasts, blood-eyed demonic apes, purgatory blood phoenixes, purple gold dragon pythons, and all kinds of strange and bizarre creatures that had long disappeared from the present world. He even saw a slender silver dragon. Its body was thin, and it was at least 100,000 meters long. Its slender tail looked like a long whip, and it had a large and sharp nose on its shining head. There was a pair of small horns that curved forward behind its jaw, and a pair of large horns behind its eyes. Moreover, its wings could reflect light like a mirror, giving it a metallic texture. Chapter 4150. Without a doubt, this black dragon, whose body was over 200,000 zhang long, was extremely powerful. The aura of its bloodline was too intense. Even though it had been dead for countless years, its body still emitted a terrifying aura that could cause the world to tremble. This was especially so when the edges of its scales and irises were inlaid with the same fine golden edges. When one looked at it, one could feel as if there were ripples of golden light flashing invisibly in the eyes. The black and sturdy scales and the mystical fine golden lines around its irises clearly showed that this was a mutated black dragon with an extremely powerful body and some kind of powerful eye technique. Its peak battle strength back then was very likely not as simple as the legendary Almighty of the Primordial Era. It was very likely that it was a supreme being of the Primordial Era. When he thought of this, Emperor's entire body trembled uncontrollably. It wasn't fear but excitement. To him, this corner of the Primordial Era connected to the black hole was simply a supreme treasure trove. Just the corpses of the Primordial Era ferocious birds and strange beasts were enough for him to enjoy for several lifetimes. There was simply no way he could use them all up. What's more, what was in his line of sight was only the outermost edge of this corner of the Primordial Era. From the fact that it was so deep that even the old monsters of the Sector Lords couldn't see the end of it, it was very likely that there were even more shocking opportunities in the depths of this corner of the Primordial Era. Fate and fortune. He didn't even doubt that with the corpses of the Primordial Era ferocious birds and strange beasts, not to mention the puny Undying Realm, he would definitely be able to step into the Marquis Realm, Emperor Realm, or even Emperor Realm in the future. Emperor Realm? I didn't even dare to think about it at first, but now, it seems that anything is possible. As his body trembled, Emperor didn't hesitate anymore. At this moment he had already thrown Qi, and the tens of thousands of demon clansmen that had been sucked into this corner of the Primordial Era to the back of his mind. Right now, the only thought in his mind was to take advantage of the fact that this place hadn't been exposed yet, and wasn't discovered by more powerful beings of the starry sky and various powers. He would immediately rush in and do his best to harvest the corpses of the Primordial Era creatures that were strewn all over the place like trash. These were all supreme cultivation resources that one could only come across by chance. Awoo! While feeling excited, Emperor's huge nether skull turned into a streak of blood-green light. He quickly traversed more than 20 million miles of space and plunged into the vast black hole in front of him. For the past few days, Yixian had been staying in the Star Lord Mansion on the Sky River planet. He had been trying to communicate with the corpse lantern tattoo on his left chest, but to no avail. He had been feeling a little depressed. For the past few days, the three main starry skies had been excessively quiet. Yixian had always had a bad premonition, and his heart was anxious. Until yesterday, this extremely uneasy feeling suddenly became very strong. Although he still couldn't tell whether it was a good or bad omen, he knew that the three main starry skies of the current world were all very quiet. Somewhere there was probably a huge change that had happened. Since then Yixian had been waiting. Unfortunately, whether it was in the first universe or the second universe, there was no special news. As for the third universe where the human clan was, there wasn't even the slightest movement. Just as he was feeling doubtful and wondering if he had overlooked something, a thunderclap suddenly came from the second universe without warning. Caught off guard, Yixian was burnt on the outside and tender on the inside. He stood in place with his mouth wide open. His mind was buzzing, and his whole person was stunned. The shadow demon star field in the second universe, which was the chaotic space vortex formed after the nest of the former demon clan's ancestral land was blown up, had changed. The news came from the Blood Dragon clan, one of the top 10 clans in the second universe. There was an immortal realm old monster in the Blood Dragon clan, the three-clawed Flood Dragon, who had long since surrendered to Yixian. This time it was him who had passed on this news through some secret channel. Because this matter was too important, the top 10 clans in the second universe immediately arranged an army outside the 2 wormholes leading to the third universe and the first universe after receiving the news. They didn't allow this news to spread from the second universe. Of course, in the end, paper couldn't wrap up fire. No matter how tight the blockade was, the news would leak out one day. The top 10 clans in the second universe were well aware of this, but they still did it. They didn't even care about how the other top clans and forces in the other 2 main starry skies would view this matter after the news leaked out in the future. They didn't even seem to care about the thoughts of Yi Xian, the person who represented the great destiny of the current world. Even though just a few days ago, the top 10 clans in the second universe had come to the Heavenly River planet in the third universe in an attempt to repair their relationship with Yi Xian. All of this was because the benefits represented by this unforeseen event were too amazing. According to the news sent by the 3-clawed flood dragon, the Yin's Nest Void Turbulence Vortex, which was originally only tens of thousands of miles in radius, had now become a black hole with a diameter of tens of millions of miles. Inside the black hole was a corner of the ancient desolate world that was so deep that it was boundless. Just in the void at the edge there was a huge amount of ancient beasts, the remains of birds and exotic beasts. Whether it was the quantity or the quality of the remains of these ancient creatures, they far surpassed everything in the first universe's source of all evil star field. The top 10 clans in the second universe clearly wanted to eat it alone. They didn't want this cake to be divided between the 2 camps of the human race and the clans of the first universe. In order to ensure this, they even sent a large number of troops to monitor the Nether Turtle star field, which had already been sealed, to prevent the Nether Turtle clan from leaking this matter. F***CK. Something big is going to happen. The time for this Star Master to set off again has come. After recovering from this shocking news, Yi Xian immediately waved his hand and summoned the Life Stronghold. With a flash of his body, he directly arrived at the lowest level of the stronghold. Here there was a slime broodmother, and at every moment a large number of evil spirit slimes were hatching. The next moment, a familiar system notification sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations, host. Discovered Crystal of Elves. The Crystal of Elves was the crystallization of the power within the slime, and it was one of the natural life energy that could be absorbed by the world bug's self-evolving group. This crystal was one of the important resources for the evolution of Life Fortress, and it was also the reason why Yi Xian had come to the lowest level of the fortress. This time he wanted to quickly upgrade the level of Life Fortress, so Yi Xian decided to collect a large number of Crystal of Elves for the world bug's self-evolving group to absorb. He immediately gave the order to collect. Half an hour later, hundreds of thousands of Crystal of Elves were gathered together, turned into a ray of light, and shot into Yi Xian's hand. Chapter 4151. Generally speaking, there were 3 types of space fortresses. Small fortresses with a diameter of 50,000 meters. Large fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters. In addition to these 2 types, there was also a Starry Sky Fortress. The diameter of the Starry Sky Fortress exceeded 100,000 meters, which was 300,000 meters. Yi Xian's Starry Sky Battle could barely be considered a Starry Sky Giant Fortress level killing weapon. However, it couldn't be called a Starry Sky Giant Fortress because it only had a diameter of 300,000 meters, which was 300,000 meters. The space fortress had a large head and a small body. The body of the space fortress couldn't be compared to a space fortress. What's more, this space fortress was a special weapon of war. It wasn't a space fortress in the normal sense. Speaking of which, the Heaven's Legacy race's headquarters, the Heaven's Legacy City, was a true space fortress. Normally, it could stretch out and turn into a starry sky continent. There were mountains, rivers, and even cities on it. During wartime, if necessary, it could instantly shrink and transform into a sphere with a diameter of 1 million meters, which was 330,000 meters, or 1,000 kilometers, and quickly travel through the universe and the galaxy. In addition to the Tianji city, it was said that the immortal dynasty of the human race also had a similar star fortress. However, compared to the Tianji city, there was a gap. Its diameter was only 100,000 feet, which was 300,000 meters, which was much smaller. Also, it was said that the human race's Tenju celestial palaces also had a super space fortress. However, it was only 100,000 meters in diameter like the space fortress of the immortal dynasty. Currently, the life stronghold in Yixian's hands had only grown to the size of a large stronghold, which was only 100,000 meters long. There was still quite a bit of distance between it and the minimum requirement of 300,000 meters. It wasn't that the growth of the world bug that formed the life stronghold was slow. At this level, it was very difficult to increase it any further. Its current size of 100,000 meters was deliberately limited by Yixian. The reason for this was because the size of a 100,000-meter stronghold was already enough for Yixian. However, the situation this time was obviously different. The entrance was located in the mysterious desolate great world in the Shadow Devil Star, zone of the second universe. It was very deep. After entering, one might not be able to come back often. Moreover, the creatures of the desolate great world were all very large. Furthermore, Yixian's current strength was sufficient. Therefore, he could control an even larger space fortress. Therefore, upgrading the life fortress from its current size of 100,000 meters in diameter to a giant fortress of 300,000 meters in diameter was a must. The elven crystal was the crystallization of the energy inside the slime. It was the natural life energy that could be absorbed by the world worms. Moreover, the elven crystal's effect on the growth of the world worms had been proven to be very good. These hundreds of thousands of elven crystals weren't considered small. According to the calculations of Yixian's devouring system, it was enough to easily grow the life stronghold to over 100,000 meters, which was 300,000 meters. It was even possible for it to reach 200,000 meters. The headquarters of the Heaven's Legacy race, Heaven's Legacy City, was only 330,000 meters. If the life fortress could reach 200,000 meters, and at the same time its internal structure and performance would be improved as well, then even if he didn't use the Farmer God Cauldron, which was as large as a superstar in its complete form, he would be able to use it. With the life fortress in his hands, Yixian would have the confidence to challenge the Heaven's Legacy race. In reality, although the Farmer God Cauldron was powerful, it was still lacking in some aspects compared to a purely combat space fortress. In terms of roaming the universe, the life fortress was still more convenient, however, even with the life energy required for the evolution of the world worms, and a large amount of it at that, they still needed time to grow. Yixian handed over all of the hundreds of thousands of elven crystals to the devouring system, and ordered the system to absorb the energy within them. After injecting it into the life fortress, he waved his hand and stored the life fortress into his undying world. According to his estimation, this evolution and growth would take about 3 days. Of course, this time referred to the overall improvement of the life fortress's size and internal performance, not just its volume. Otherwise, it would have been completed in less than half a day. After doing all this, Yixian immediately returned to the Star-Lord's mansion on the Sky River Star planet. Through the Sky River Star Network's AI Control Center, he ordered Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher and the generals under Naples to come to the Star-Lord's mansion to discuss important matters very soon. A group of people who had been working hard with Yixian since a long time ago gathered at the Star-Lord's mansion on the Sky River Star. Yixian explained the general situation to everyone, then changed the topic and directly expressed his intentions. This time, although the desolate world that the second universe's Shadow Devil Star domain has descended into is not like the caged star domain of the first universe's Demon Star domain, it is a corner of the desolate world. The entire world has descended. However, compared to the caged starfield in the Demonkin starfield, the mysterious desolate era starfield in the Shadow Devil starfield in the first universe is much deeper and farther away. It's impossible to know how deep it is. Moreover, there are already a large number of corpses of enormous desolate era creatures in its periphery. They have appeared. Their level is not inferior to that of the core of the root of all evil. From this, we can roughly infer that this mysterious desolate world is very likely the center of the battle of the primordial era. Even if it isn't, it is definitely a corner of the shattered star domain that is extremely close to the center of the battle. Currently, the situation facing the 3 main planes of the starry skies is extremely worrisome. The great chaos of the primordial era can descend at any time. At this time, entering the shattered star realm, which is close to the core of the great battle, is of great significance. There will definitely be many discoveries. After saying that, Yixian paused for a moment, turned around and swept his gaze over the experts present before continuing. So, I decided to enter immediately. Furthermore, I won't bring too many people with me this time. What I mean is, Only Gue Hai Dao and Song Qingyu will bring 10,000 Devil Cultivator Scouts with them. Just bring me along with you. In addition, I will take the Shenong Cauldron, the other star domains, and the Life Fortress with me. The Life Fortress will complete its first evolution in 3 days. At that time, it will grow to nearly 200,000 feet, which is 600,000 meters in diameter. Its interior will also be equipped with the space folding technology, so the space will be even larger. Chapter 4152. No, this old man doesn't agree. As soon as Yixian finished speaking, Old Devil Mosquito Butcher rolled his eyes and immediately objected. Why don't you take this old man with you? Naples quickly followed up. If he was alone, he obviously wouldn't dare to disagree with Yixian, but with Old Devil Mosquito Butcher taking the lead, he naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity and immediately joined in, nodding his head like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, 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 me too. That's what I mean. In the end, it wasn't that these two guys didn't want Yixian to go, but that they also wanted to go. If you all go, what about Planet Triumphant Return and Planet Sky River? Are you going to give up just like that? Yixian was speechless and shook his head with a bitter smile. He didn't give these two guys a chance to continue speaking and directly made the decision. This matter is settled. If you all want to go, you can decide according to the situation. If the situation requires it, you can enter as the second batch of reinforcements. As for entering, that's right. This matter is so big that no matter how the races of the second universe try to cover it up, the news will soon leak out. When that time comes, countless forces of various sizes on the 3 main planes of the starry skies will flock there. That mysterious desolate world will definitely be a mess. Old Devil Mosquito Butcher didn't refute Yixian's words this time and nodded in agreement. In that case, we will first prepare in secret on Planet Triumphant Return and Planet Sky River. When everything is ready and the situation requires it, we will immediately set off. Very well, this matter is settled. Gue Hai Dao, Song Qingyu, you two choose your candidates within 3 days. Each of you will lead 10,000 demon scouts and board the ship in 3 days. With that, Yixian waved his hand and dismissed the meeting. 3 days later, Yixian waved his hand in a remote area of Planet Sky River and activated Life Fortress. Rumble. A true colossus suddenly appeared without any warning and stood in front of Yixian. Even the air was suppressed to the point that low and deep thunderous sounds could be heard. After 3 whole days, the Life Fortress had completely changed. Previously, it was only 100,000 meters in diameter, but now it was more than 160,000 meters in diameter, which was 500,000 meters. Even compared to the headquarters of the Tianji city of the Tianji clan, it was half its diameter. In terms of kilometers, it was 500 kilometers, just like a miniature planet. Moreover, even the shape had changed from the previous spherical shape to the current oblate shape. This shape was more suitable for galloping through the starry skies of the universe, and its speed would be faster. Yixian blankly stared at the colossus in front of him for a few moments before he recovered from his shock. His figure flashed as he entered the interior of the Life Giant Fortress. Compared to before, just the exterior of the Life Giant plug had expanded many times. As for the interior space, because of the use of spatial folding technology, it was obviously much more spacious. As soon as Yixian entered, his eyes lit up. He could see that this was clearly a place that was like an independent paradise. There were mountains and rivers, and he couldn't tell that this was the interior of a starry sky fortress at all. Of course, this was only one layer of the giant astral fortress. In fact, such a huge giant astral fortress had a diameter of 500 kilometers. No matter how vast the space inside was, how could there only be one layer? If that was the case, it would waste too much space. There were a total of 18 levels in the entire giant fortress of life. Each level had a different scenery and a different function. Yixian swept past them one by one, as if he was looking at flowers on horseback. Afterwards, he flashed out and waved his hand to store it into the undying world within his body. Then, he returned to the Star Lord residence in Heavenly River City. The moment he arrived, he saw 20,000 demon soldiers gathered in front of the Star Lord residence. Although these 20,000 demon cultivator scouts were led by Gue Hai Dao and Song Qingyu, the two captains, Yixian clearly saw quite a few familiar faces among them. For example, Nabushan Ba Chai Li Mosquito Zhuo Fengtai and the others. These guys were all old friends of Yixian. Their cultivation was far stronger than Gui Hai Dao and Song Qingyu. They were close to the universe realm. But this time, in order to go with Yixian to the mysterious desolate ancient world, they had shamelessly snuck into this army of 20,000 demon soldiers to be ordinary scouts. This scene also caused Yixian to be drunk. Fortunately, the great general manager of the demon slaves Barker Tuwei Balu, the demon race think tank Hongji Pilo, and the others didn't get involved. It was enough for them to lead and manage the other demons in Heavenly River Star. Therefore, Yixian didn't reprimand Neboshan and the others for sneaking into the two demon scout armies to be the soldiers at the front. He just turned a blind eye to it and brought it over. At this time there was already a star fortress hovering in the sky above the Star Lord residence. It was the Black Mosquito ship that Yixian was most familiar with. Although he had the life fortress, it was not suitable to expose it now. Besides, it was too big to pass through the star passage in Heavenly River Planet's atmosphere. Therefore, they could only leave through the Black Mosquito ship for the time being. Just as Gui Hai Dao and Song Qingyu gave the order for all 20,000 Devil Cultivator scouts to board the ship, a figure flew out from the City Lord's mansion and directly arrived in front of Yixian, requesting to accompany them. It was none other than Yingtai of the Tianji clan, who had given Yixian a headache in the past. Of course, the current Yingtai was no longer a member of the Tianji clan. The imperial preceptor of the Eternal Dynasty D-Heir had secretly modified her. The current Yingtai was a pure member of the Machinery clan. However, the Machinery clan and the Tianji clan were actually the same in essence. They were all mechanical life forms, but they were from different camps. Yixian did not know this, but ever since Yingtai was secretly modified by the imperial preceptor D-Heir and became a spy of the Machinery clan that D-Heir had planted beside Yixian, Yingtai's personality had completely changed from before. She did not speak much and would not be an eyesore even if she was by his side. Considering the fact that they were going to encounter all kinds of situations in that mysterious primordial world, it was very likely that it would come in handy if they brought a mechanical artificial intelligence life with them. Therefore, he nodded and agreed to Yingtai's request after pondering it for a while. At this time, the 20,000 demon soldiers led by Gui Hai Dao and Song Qingyu had all boarded the ship and entered the Black Mosquito ship. Seeing Yixian nod in agreement, Yingtai was very happy. She turned around and flew into the Black Mosquito ship. This time I'm leaving secretly. Don't announce this to the public. Also, if there are visitors, just tell them that I'm in seclusion. Chapter 4153. In fact, Yixian didn't even need to use the wormhole to travel to Universe 2. He had the planar level interstellar coordinate jump ability. He could directly activate it, and he would be able to cross over from Universe 3 to Universe 2 in an instant. Now with his planar level interstellar coordinate jump ability, after the last system title upgrade, he had the authority to imprint 2 interstellar coordinates in each universe. In Universe 1, Yixian had imprinted 2 interstellar coordinates. One was the black hole of life, and the other was the star field, the source of all evil. But in Universe 3 and Universe 2, he had only imprinted 1 interstellar coordinate. In Universe 3 it was the star field of death, while in Universe 2, it just so happened that it was near the void turbulence vortex where the Een nest of the Een demon clan was located. This time, Yixian decided to imprint the 2nd interstellar coordinate of Universe 3 before he left. After all, Heavenly River Star was now his private planet. It was extremely necessary to leave an interstellar coordinate there. Just like Planet Triumph, in case there was a need, even if he was in another universe, he could directly activate the planar level interstellar coordinate jump ability and return in an instant. Not long after, Yixian arrived at the depths of Heavenly River Sea and found an extremely remote area. After confirming that everything was suitable, he immediately issued an order to the system and began to imprint the 2nd interstellar coordinate of Universe 3. The system's prompt sounded in his mind, guiding Yixian step by step to imprint the coordinates. A strand of primordial spirit that had been processed through various methods was refined into a special imprint by Yixian with ease. Then this primordial spirit imprint was shot out of his body in an extremely mysterious and complicated manner. It connected with the void trench in the depths of the sea in front of Yixian, and finally completely merged with it. This was already the 5th time he had imprinted an interstellar coordinate, But the pain of forcibly separating a strand of his own primordial spirit was still difficult for Yixian to get used to. It was simply indescribable, but he forced himself to endure until the strand of primordial spirit was separated. Yixian did not immediately adjust his breathing to recover his mind. Instead, he forcefully endured the various discomforts of his injured soul core, and pulled himself together before using different and complicated methods to ceaselessly condense this strand of soul core. This process consumed a great deal of effort. In the end, Yixian paid close attention to the entire process. From connecting the void to matching the primordial spirit brand to the perfect fusion, he did not dare to relax at all. After a total of half a day, his second interstellar coordinate in Universe 3 was finally perfectly integrated into the void of this deep-sea corner of Sky River planet. It completely stabilized and disappeared. Even Yixian could not catch the slightest trace of its aura. At this point, everything was considered complete. Without any hesitation, Yixian waved his hand and immediately ordered the Devouring system in his body to activate the interplanar coordinate jump ability. This time, the jump coordinate he locked onto was the Shadow Demon Star domain in Universe 2. It was not far from the void turbulence vortex formed after the explosion of the Een nest in the ancestral land of the Een demon clan, which was also the entrance passage to the mysterious primordial world. Perhaps no one would have expected that even though the two interplanar wormholes connecting Universe 1 and Universe 3 to Universe 2 had long been strictly guarded by the armies of the top 10 clans in Universe 2, Yixian had still quietly entered the interplanar world of Universe 2. Moreover, he had directly appeared near the entrance passage to the mysterious primordial world that had just descended not long ago. It took almost no effort for him to easily blend in and enter that mysterious primordial world. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 3 full days had passed since Yixian had left Sky River Planet using the interplanar coordinate jump ability. During these 3 days, except for the interplanar wormhole passageways leading to the other 2 universes, which were completely blocked off, even the interplanar wormhole passageways leading to the other 2 universes were heavily guarded. No one was allowed to leave or enter the interplanar world of Universe 2. Everything seemed to be very quiet, and nothing special happened, since a piece of the primordial world fragment had completely descended in Universe 1, replacing the Demon Emperor star domain. Therefore, the rumor that the great primordial chaos was about to descend in full force had become the consensus of almost all the clans and forces in the 3 main universes of the universe. Ever since the current owner of the Great Destiny was determined to be the Heavenly River Star Master, Yixian, all the races and powers in the 3 Great Plains had quieted down. In the recent period of time, the 3 great starry skies had all been shrouded in an extremely silent and oppressive atmosphere. Everyone felt that something big was about to happen. However, even the super-old monsters who were the best at the art of deduction could not deduce any information at all, not even a few words. This situation made people uneasy. Therefore, in this oppressive atmosphere, almost all the clans and forces in Universe 1 and Universe 3 had been dormant recently. Very few of them had made any big moves. Even the bands of space pirates who were wandering in the void had returned to their bases to hide, secretly making preparations. Under such circumstances, the number of so-called planar-level starship caravans was naturally far fewer than usual. Because of this, it had been several days since the change in Universe 2, but the news had not leaked out. It was not that there were no interstellar individual cultivators or commercial fleets that entered Universe 2 through the dimension-level space wormholes in Universe 1 and Universe 3. However, they were usually wiped out as soon as they entered. Just a small fleet of space pirates could be easily wiped out by the tens of millions of troops of the top 10 clans in Universe 2, who were guarding the entrances of the 2 universe wormholes. However, paper could not wrap fire in the end. On this day, a huge change suddenly occurred in the first universe. After leaving the Cage Star domain, where it had just descended, it had disappeared for a period of time. No one knew where it had gone. However, on this day it suddenly appeared. And as soon as it appeared, it directly rushed into the dimension-level space wormhole in Universe 1 that led to Universe 2. It was obviously going to go from Universe 1 to Universe 2. Chapter 4154. The Netherworld Furnace had reappeared, and it was acting strangely. The news was immediately sent back to the 3rd universe of the human race. Soon, the top leaders of the two camps of the human race and the core elders of the Wanluo Federation Senate learned about it. Then the immortal dynasty of the Science and Technology camp, the Tenju Celestial Palace of the Cultivation camp, and the Senate of the Wanluo Federation each sent two immortal old monsters to the second universe to check out the situation. Immortal old monsters had the ability to directly tear apart the space barrier of the great universe, but in that case, if they only sent a projection doppelganger over, the risk was almost negligible. Even if the projection doppelganger was lost in the endless space turbulence, the loss would be limited. However, if the original body went there personally, there was still a certain amount of risk in this method. Therefore, unless the situation was urgent, even the immortal realm old monsters would not choose this risky method if they wanted to go to another universe plane. In addition, the situation of the three main planes of the starry sky was not optimistic. The legendary great chaos of the primordial age could arrive at any time. When that time came, even immortal old monsters might not be able to guarantee their survival. Therefore, even if they wanted to preserve their strength, under such circumstances, if it was not absolutely necessary, immortal old monsters would not directly tear apart the void to travel across the universe. These 6 immortal old monsters from the 3 top forces of the third universe were exactly like that. After receiving the order from the top leaders of their races, they immediately rushed to the graveyard star field and went directly to the depths of this star field. They rushed into the plane-level wormhole, leading to the second universe, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The same scene was playing out in the first universe. The news that the netherworld furnace had reappeared and mysteriously went to the second universe was received by the races of the first universe almost at the same time as the 3 top forces of the human race. After that, the Hell Ant race, the Space Rat race, the Giant Ferocious race, and some other races in the alliance of 10,000 races in the first universe all sent out an immortal old monster. After rushing to the edge of the demon sector, they all rushed into the wormhole leading to the second universe. For a time, the 3 main planes of the starry sky were stirred up and gathered in the second universe. The second universe. At the exits of the 2 plane-level wormholes leading to the first universe and the third universe, there was an army of starships of all kinds stationed there. There were tens of millions of starships of all kinds. The 2 plane-level wormholes were not far from each other, only tens of millions of miles apart. In the universe, tens of millions of miles were not too far away. The 2 armies of tens of millions of starships stationed outside the 2 plane-level wormholes were mainly led by 9 of the top 10 races of the second universe, including the Blood Dragon Clan, the Green Rock Clan, the Warrior Lion Clan, the Inji Clan, the Raging Bull Clan, the Golden Eagle Clan, Colorful Python Clan, and the Tree Clan. As for the Dark Tortoise Clan, which was also one of the top 10 clans, because they had already announced that they would completely seal off their clans, the Dark Tortoise Clan had not participated in any of the recent joint actions of the clans in the second universe. In fact, not a single Nether Turtle could be seen in the entire Nether Turtle star field. The Nether Turtle star who went to the Sky River planet in the third universe and participated in the ceremony of the Master of Yixian star field was the only being of the Nether Turtle clan who showed up in the 3 main planes of the starry sky in the past half a year. Even so, the other 9 races of the top 10 races of the second universe, including the Blood Dragon Clan and the Green Rock Clan, still sent a fleet to the Nether Turtle star field. They kept a close watch on the periphery of the Nether Turtle star field in case an immortal-level powerhouse from this race tore through the void and left. Everything that happened in the dimensions on the second day after the incident in the Shadow Devil star field, the upper echelons of the various races of the second universe learned about everything that happened in the Enes turbulent whirlpool. The sudden appearance of this mysterious desolate world shocked the various races of the second universe. The upper echelons of the various races felt that a great fortune was coming. They immediately sent 1 or 2 immortal-level old monsters to lead a small exploration fleet to the space that was tens of millions of miles wide. They rushed into the interior of the mysterious desolate world through the tunnel. This was just the vanguard. Their main purpose was to explore. Later, the various races of the second universe would form an army and enter the desolate world to plunder all kinds of resources. Now the various races had basically finished their preparations. If nothing unexpected happened, the second main army would depart in 1 or 2 days at the earliest. They would depart from the ancestral lands of the various races of the second universe and enter this mysterious desolate world in a mighty manner. They naturally knew that the news about this mysterious desolate world would eventually leak out. However, that didn't matter. As long as they could delay it for 1 or 2 months, the various races of the second universe who entered the desolate world first would have already made a lot of money. At that time, even if the armies of the first universe and the third universe arrived, they would only be able to eat some bones and drink some soup behind them. This was a wishful thinking, but unfortunately, man proposes and God disposes. Just as the second main army of the various races of the second universe was about to depart, an accident finally happened. Walala. An earth-shattering crash suddenly sounded. At the same time, a gigantic figure as huge as a star rushed out of the plane-level wormhole that led to the first universe. It was the infamous netherworld furnace of the first universe's source of all evil in the starfield. At this moment, the netherworld furnace rushed out of the plane-level wormhole. On both sides of the furnace's outer wall, there were tens of thousands of rune chains that were millions of miles long. As it rushed out of the wormhole, the earth-shattering sound of the chains appeared because of this. At first glance, it was as if a giant tentacle monster with a round and bloated body had suddenly rushed out of a wormhole. In fact, for the experts of the various races of the second universe who were guarding this plane-level wormhole, they would rather see a giant tentacle monster rushing out of the wormhole at this time. Even if it was a group of them, it wouldn't matter. After all, the fierce reputation of the netherworld furnace was too deeply rooted in people's hearts. Its sudden arrival was basically tantamount to announcing a bloody catastrophe that would soon descend on this starfield. The tens of millions of starships guarding this place came from various races of the second universe, but they were mainly led by the Battle Lion clan, the Inji clan, the Raging Bull clan, and the Golden Eagle clan, which were among the top 10 most powerful races. Chapter 4155. My God! Netherworld furnace? I actually saw a netherworld furnace in the second universe? Hasn't it been wreaking havoc in the first universe? When did it learn how to travel between planes? Evolution. There is no doubt that the netherworld furnace has evolved again after the bloody plunder in the demon territory. The intelligence of the spirit inside it is even higher. Otherwise, it would never be able to enter the wormhole and travel between planes. Damn it! Is this broken furnace crazy? Why did it come to the second universe at such a time? Even if we don't mention its terrifying destructive power, just the fact that it crossed planes to come here must have alarmed the higher-ups of the various races in the other two universes. There is no doubt about this. Maybe the two human camps, the Wan Luo Federation, and the various races in the first universe have already sent immortal realm old monsters here. It's over. The news will be leaked after all. Report back to the races immediately, and let the second main force set off immediately. We must plunder as many resources as possible before the forces of the other universes gather here. That's not important. The key is what to do now. This wormhole. Are we still guarding it? Guarding? How? This is the infamous netherworld cauldron in the origin of all evil star area. Even the almighty beings of the desolate antiquity era might not be able to defeat it easily. Us 6 immortal realm old monsters might not even be enough to fill the gap between its teeth. Along with the uproar in the void, the netherworld cauldron, which had been continuously rattling, suddenly became louder. After rushing out of the wormhole, the netherworld cauldron didn't stop at all, as if it had already sensed something. It actually identified the direction of the Shadow Devil star area, and waved the 2 chains outside the cauldron. Tens of thousands of rune chains unfolded at an extremely fast speed and rushed straight ahead. Unfortunately, among the tens of millions of starships stationed in the second universe, there happened to be 2 races with nearly 2 million starships in the front, blocking the netherworld furnace's path. At this moment, countless masters of the various races in the second universe in the nearly 2 million starships of various types almost had a mental breakdown. If they had a choice, they probably wouldn't choose to station in this direction even if they were beaten to death. In fact, if they had time, they would rather immediately open up a channel for the netherworld furnace to rush over without any hindrance. Unfortunately, that was only an if. Because the 2 million battleships were very close to the exit of the wormhole, and the speed at which the netherworld furnace rushed out of the wormhole was extremely fast, there was not the slightest bit of delay or pause. As soon as it rushed out of the wormhole, it determined this direction and rushed straight in. As a result, the 2 million battleships were instantly crushed. Walala. Boom boom. Amidst the clanging of the chains, a series of heaven-shaking explosions rang out. The massive nether furnace turned into a black streak of light that slammed into the 2 million warships. In an instant, flames soared into the sky. All the battleships that were hit by the netherworld cauldron or hit by the rune chains that were waving like spirit snakes outside the cauldron walls, regardless of whether they were large or small, were all like paper paste, exploding at the first moment. It suddenly exploded. This scene was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. After the bloody plundering in the demon territory of the first universe not long ago, the netherworld furnace had hibernated and completed this evolution. Its power had obviously become stronger because of the transformation of the artifact spirit. A large fortress with a diameter of 100,000 meters, when hit by the rune chains outside the cauldron walls, was directly shattered into a large piece of starry sky alloy without any suspense. Its momentum was simply unstoppable. 2 million battleships were spread out in the void. It could be said to be a vast expanse that almost extended to the end of the line of sight. But at this moment they couldn't even hold on for half an incense stick's time. As the netherworld furnace shot forward, in the center of this huge starship army, a starry sky passage full of blood and fire was forcibly plowed out. It also spread all the way to the end of the line of sight. In a short time, at least 700,000 of the 2 million starships of various types were destroyed. Even the 1,200,000 starships that survived were only able to escape because the netherworld furnace didn't have the heart to fight at all, and didn't bother to pay attention to them. It only focused on charging straight ahead. When the experts of various races in the second universe in the star fortresses and fortresses around the void came to themselves, the netherworld furnace that suddenly appeared had turned into a streak of black light and disappeared into the horizon. And that direction was exactly where the space zone of Shadow Devil was located. This couldn't be a coincidence. The netherworld furnace had suddenly appeared in the second universe because of the mysterious primordial world in the space zone of Shadow Devil. This news made everyone's heart sink. In fact, with the sudden arrival of the netherworld furnace, they had already realized that the secret of the mysterious primordial world in the space zone of Shadow Devil could no longer be hidden. The races of the first universe and the human race of the third universe, as well as the experts and the army of the Council of Elders of the Wanluo Federation, would soon arrive. But even so, the situation wasn't actually the worst. After all, it would take time for the armies of the other two universes to gather. Moreover, they had traveled across universes. By the time the armies of various races entered the second universe through wormholes, the second main force of the races of the second universe would have at least entered the mysterious primordial world. It had been 2 or 3 days since the primordial world. 2 or 3 days was enough for them to plunder a large amount of resources. They had finally seized an opportunity. But now, after knowing that even the netherworld furnace had come for that mysterious desolate ancient world, the last trace of wishful thinking in everyone's heart had completely disappeared at this moment. Although the second main force of the races of the second universe had basically finished gathering and could set off at any time to enter the mysterious primordial world, they hadn't set off yet, had they? The netherworld furnace, on the other hand, had already arrived. In less than half an hour, it had destroyed almost 1 million starships of various types unstoppably before it turned into a streak of blackness and disappeared at the end of everyone's sight. At this speed, the netherworld furnace would arrive at the space zone of Shadow Devil, where the entrance to the mysterious primordial world was located in at most the time of a meal. Then it would rush into it without any delay. With the netherworld furnace's ferocity and appetite, even if they followed it into the primordial world, they would at most eat some bones and drink some soup. Chapter 4156. Damn it! What the hell happened? How did the news leak out? And the netherworld furnace in the first universe knows about it. That's a big deal. It shouldn't be because the news leaked out. Otherwise, if the netherworld furnace got the news, how could the races in the first universe and the human race in the third universe and the Wanluo Federation not do anything? That's right. The existence behind the netherworld furnace is suspected to be the great path of the primitive era, which is closely related to the primitive world. It must have sensed something in a way that we don't know, and that's why it came here directly from the first universe. It's useless to talk about this. Now the netherworld furnace is on its way to the domain of Shadow Devil, and it will enter the mysterious desolate world in a few minutes. Inform our races immediately. The second main force will set off immediately. Even if we eat all the food, we will not be satisfied. Evacuate. Evacuate immediately. It's meaningless to stay here. The netherworld furnace has arrived. It's impossible that the races in the other two universes have not been alarmed. Their armies will be here soon. As the netherworld cauldron floated away, the 6 imperishable old monsters jumped and roared in the void. In the end, outside the plane-level wormhole leading to the second universe, nearly 10 million battleships of various types all opened their kinetic energy cabins. Rumbling sounds echoed throughout the entire void. Because of the lack of time, they even ignored the million damaged starships that were still rumbling in the void now and then. All the starships followed the flagship fortresses of their respective clans and marched toward the ancestral land of their clans at the highest speed. They were one of the members of the second main force of the various clans that were about to head to the mysterious primordial world. No one was willing to easily miss such a fortuitous encounter and fortune. 2 hours later, the nearly 10 million troops stationed outside the plane-level wormhole leading to the first universe had left. Even the other 10 million troops stationed outside the plane-level wormhole leading to the third universe, which was tens of millions of miles away, had completely evacuated after receiving the news. At these 2 wormholes, except for the one in front of them, there were nearly 1 million battleships of various types left in the void, which were still steaming. Except for the blazing flames, there were no more battleships left. At this time, the experts from the other 2 universes who followed the netherworld furnace finally arrived. Swish! Swish, swish, swish. Faint sounds of breaking through the air rang out. From the 2 wormholes that were separated by tens of millions of miles, more than a dozen figures rushed out one after another. All of them were immortal old monsters. They came from the 2 camps of the human clan, the Myriad Luo Federation, and the first universe, which included the Hell Ant clan and the Space Rat clan. Various clans. As for what was happening here, the group of Undyings who had rushed over had no idea at all. However, due to the sudden change in the netherworld furnace, they more or less had their own speculations. At this moment, those who had just rushed out of the wormhole suddenly looked up and saw nearly 1 million starry sky battleships in front of them. These immortal old monsters from different races and forces were stunned for a moment, and then they were all shocked. Soon, a soft voice filled with suspicion rang out. Hiss! What happened here? Looking at the marks on the battleships, they should have been destroyed by brute force. There are also some that were forcefully cut open by a blunt object. It matches the marks of the rune chains on the outer wall of the netherworld furnace. This is clearly the work of the netherworld furnace. But why is there an army of 1 million starships here? Are the races of the second universe having a civil war? At this time they shouldn't have gathered such a large army, and it just so happens that they are right in front of the plane-level wormhole that leads to the first universe. No, there are also traces of energy in the void near the plane-level wormhole that leads to the third universe. At least an army of 10 million has gathered here, and it has been less than 6 hours since they left. The 2 plane-level wormholes that lead to other universes are heavily guarded. What are the races of the second universe doing? Soon as these soft exclamations rang out, the immortal old monsters who had roughly figured out the situation became even more suspicious. Originally, they had quietly crossed the dimensions to come here, and there were so many of them. For the races of the second universe, this matter was too sensitive. If they spread out their soul consciousness to investigate without any scruples, it would be really inappropriate. If they did so, it was very likely that the immortal old monsters of the top 10 races of the second universe would be alarmed and cause unnecessary misunderstandings. However, the clues that they had found were too suspicious. If they didn't get to the bottom of this matter, no one would be able to feel at ease. Therefore, after the soft exclamations stopped, a group of nearly 20 immortal old monsters from various races and top forces of the 2 universes exchanged glances with each other, and quickly reached a consensus. No matter what, they had to find out the truth and figure out what was going on in the second universe. What was going on? Even if it would cause the immortal old monsters of the top 10 races of the second universe to misunderstand, they would not hesitate. After making the decision, the nearly 20 immortal old monsters no longer hesitated. They immediately spread out their soul consciousness and extended it forward. A circle of invisible soul consciousness rippled out in an instant. In just a short breath, it had already enveloped an extremely vast area of the void of the universe. The immortal old monster's soul consciousness was very strong. Even if it couldn't cover an entire universe, it had no problem covering 1 or 2 star zones. Unfortunately, the domain of Shadow Devil, where the vast passageway leading to the mysterious Desolation world was located, happened to be not too far away from the 2 wormholes. It was only 1 star zone away. In fact, even the 2 armies of various races of the second universe that had just left the wormhole 2 hours ago were still within the range of the star zone in front of them. They hadn't gone too far. All of this fell into the eyes of the dozen or so immortal old monsters who had hurried over. They were all captured by the soul consciousness that they had spread out with all their strength. In the next instant, cries of alarm that were filled with extreme shock rang out one after another. Heavens! There is actually a vast starry sky passage in the direction of the domain of Shadow Devil? Inside the starry sky passage is clearly a mysterious desolation world that has no end. The netherworld furnace has just rushed in. I understand now. No wonder the netherworld furnace came here. There is a great opportunity here. The races of the second universe have stationed 2 armies of 10 million battleships to guard the exit of the wormhole. Chapter 4157. After a series of angry roars, the group of Immortal Realm old monsters, who had learned the truth, retreated immediately. They all turned around and rushed into the planar wormholes behind them, returning to their respective clans and forces to report the news. However, only one of the races and forces that had sent 2 Immortal Realm experts to the Myriad Luo Federation returned. The other Immortal Realm expert rushed to the spacious space tunnel in the Shadow Devil star zone of the second universe without hesitation and entered that place at once. The mysterious desolate world. Since then, the news of the arrival of a mysterious desolate world in the second universe had been completely leaked. Everyone in the 3 universes knew about it, and the 3 universes moved together. Countless races and forces, big and small, were all boiling with excitement. The moment they received the news, they issued a clan order to mobilize urgently. The first universe. Except for the demon race, which had never shown up since the second generation of the demon race took them away with a ray of light when the demon emperor star had undergone a shocking change, all the other races started to mobilize like crazy. A large number of spaceships, fortresses, and fortresses of various sizes were gathered together. The other 3 races of the alliance of the 4 races, namely the Hell Ant race, the Space Rat race, and the Giant Ferocious race, had gathered an army of 10 million spaceships in just one day. They were heading to the Giant Ferocious race, which was the closest to the Demon race. After the army of 10 million was gathered, it would be led by the 6 Immortal Realm old monsters sent by the 3 races to the frontier of the Demon race. They would rush to the second universe through the plane-level wormhole that led to the first universe. In addition, the Myriad Race Alliance, which was formed by the former slave races of the first universe, was also gathering an army quickly. All the races, which had a total of more than 20 million, were gathering at the edge of the Demon Race star zone near the central area of the first universe. The commanders of the Myriad Race Alliance this time were 10 Immortal Realm old monsters from the various races of the Alliance. At the same time, while the army of the races of the first universe was gathering, the 2 camps of the human race and the Myriad Luo Federation in the third universe were doing the same. They were gathering their forces and deploying their troops in an orderly manner. The Myriad Luo Federation Senate was the fastest. On the second day after the news came from the second universe, an army of 10 million spaceships was gathered at the station planets of the Federation military in the Undying Star Zone of the Demon Race Star Zone. They headed for the Tomb of the Fallen Star Zone immediately. The Federation fleet, which had 10 million spaceships, was led by 5 Immortal Realm old monsters. Yi. Of the tomb of the human race of the human race. Of the human of the demon race of the human race of the human race of Long Shantang. He was familiar with Yixian and he was also part of the fleet. As for the human clan's Tenju Celestial Palace, there were 6 Immortal Realm old monsters, including Gong Huaji, and the strongest one was Elder Gong Suho of Tianju Celestial Palace. 10 Extreme Celestial Palace dispatched an army of 10 million spaceships and battleships. Since the territory controlled by the Self-Cultivator camp was further away from the Tomb of the Fallen Star Zone, it had already been 10 million Immortal Realm days. The army of 10 million Immortal Realm old monsters had just entered the territory of the Science and Technology camp when the army of Heaven Extreme Celestial Palace had just set off for the Tomb of the Fallen Star Zone 2 days later. The first fleet of the Federation arrived in the domain of the graveyard of the domain of the falling stars. After entering the depths of the domain of the falling stars, they rushed directly into the plane-level wormhole that led to the second universe. Half a day later, the immortal army that was chasing after them arrived. They followed closely behind and rushed into the wormhole. Soon they disappeared. The army of heaven extreme celestial palace that had come from afar entered the wormhole 2 days later. At this point, the army of 30 million spaceships gathered by the 2 human camps and the myriad Luo Federation in the third universe, as well as the 16 immortal realm old monsters, including the 3 Marquises, had all left this realm and embarked on their journey to the second universe. In addition to these 3 top forces, there were many weaker sects, families, and forces in the third universe. Even rogue cultivators had flocked to the second universe from various star zones in the past few days. After arriving in the tomb of the fallen star zone, they directly entered the wormhole and rushed to the second universe. It was because this opportunity was too tempting. Everyone wanted to go and try their luck. Who knows, they might be able to come across a great opportunity. The second universe. It had been 3 days since the Netherworld furnace had arrived from the first universe without any warning. The Netherworld furnace, which was as powerful as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, had passed through the spacious starry passage in the domain of Shadow Devil, and entered the mysterious desolate world inside the passage. Following the Netherworld furnace were several immortal realm old monsters from various races in the first universe and the third universe, as well as the myriad Luo Federation Senate. After that, various races in the second universe, who were shocked by what had happened, swarmed into action. Except for the Netherworld Tortoise clan, which had been completely sealed off, the other 9 races in the top 10, as well as some other races that were ranked higher, each sent 1 or more immortal realm old monsters out of their ancestral lands. They all rushed into the mysterious desolate world one after another. As for the second batch of spaceships that had been gathered in these races, they basically all set off the next day and followed the first batch of spaceships into the mysterious desolate world. However, because the overall strength of the races in the second universe was uneven, the number of spaceships that entered the mysterious desolate world varied. For example, the races in the top 10, such as the Blood Flood Dragon clan, had all gathered an army of more than 5 million spaceships. Even the smaller ones maintained a scale of more than 1 million. The total number of spaceships gathered by all the races in the second universe was more than 70 to 80 million. It was not all of them, but it was more or less the same. Counting in such a way, in just a few days, the total number of starships of all kinds gathered by the major clans and forces in the 3 main planes of the universe had reached a terrifying scale of almost 200 million. It was definitely an astounding number. In the past tens of thousands of years, such a situation had never happened before. Chapter 4158. By the time Yixian arrived at the Shadow Devil Galaxy of Universe 2 with his plane-level interstellar coordinate jump ability, there were already many battleships from various races of Universe 2 shuttling back and forth in space, outside the mysterious primordial world, patrolling the area. However, this starry passage was simply too vast. It was more than 20 million kilometers away. After Yixian activated the perfect vibration of his mental energy secret technique, he was able to easily sneak in without anyone noticing. After entering the mysterious primordial world, an extremely familiar aura of the primordial world immediately assaulted his senses. Yixian was not in a hurry to go deeper. Instead, he remained in a concealed state as he observed and explored the outer regions. From the outside, the starry passage leading into the mysterious primordial world looked like a giant cosmic black hole. The primordial world inside the black hole was obviously extremely deep, with no end in sight. After entering, the feeling of being deep and distant grew even stronger. Almost as soon as he entered, Yixian was more or less certain of one thing. This mysterious primordial world was very likely the core star region of the Great Battle of the Primordial World. At the very least, it was extremely close. This was because even in the outer regions of this fragment of the primordial world, there were a large number of corpses of primordial beasts that he had never seen before floating in the void. Golden griffins, blue-eyed golden eagles, 9-tailed coxcomb snakes, 3-headed bone serpents, red phosphorus twin-tailed serpents, blood moon wolves, dark purple star wolves, yellow lightning wolves, amethyst behemoths, 5-colored divine oxen, gold moon true toads, blood jade spiders, 6-winged heavenly demonic insects, blue-eyed golden-eyed beasts, blood-eyed demonic apes, purgatory blood phoenixes, purple gold beasts, dragon pythons. Wait a minute. It was safe to say that all kinds of bizarre primordial species, birds and beasts that had long been unseen in the current era could be found here. It was too much for the eye to take in. He even saw a slender silver dragon. Its body was thin and slender, and it was at least 1,000,000 meters long. Its slender tail looked like a long whip, and there was a pair of ferocious horns behind its jaw and behind its eyes. Its wings could reflect light like mirrors, giving off a metallic texture. There was also a black dragon. Its body was so huge that it was even bigger than the silver dragon that was 1,000,000 meters long. It was over 200,000 feet long. His terrifyingly enormous dragon body was covered in solid, black metallic scales that did not pass through any light. He also had a pair of pupils that were as black as almonds, and countless brilliant golden threads that were thinner than hair were embedded in his dark irises. Judging from their auras, the silver dragon and black dragon were clearly supreme existences of the primordial era. Their battle prowess was second only to the golden divine dragon, the void tortoise, and the primordial yaksha. Even the corpses of the fallen primordial grand cultivators could be seen. How could it be at the edge of the great battle in the past? According to this inference, if everything was true, it was very likely that there was an even greater surprise and fortune in the depths of this collapsed corner of the ancient world. However, Yixian did not immediately leave to explore. He decided to collect as many corpses of the primordial grand cultivators that were lying in the void in the peripheral area first. Then he would go deeper. This matter had to be done cleverly. After all, even outside the starry sky passage, one could vaguely see the general situation of the shattered world inside the black hole through the vast passage that looked like a giant black hole. If Yixian collected all the corpses of the primordial grand cultivators in the void, it would definitely attract attention, and he would probably be exposed. In fact, long before he arrived, the various races of the second universe had each sent a fleet to explore this place. The commanders were basically all immortal realm-old monsters. Right now, they were scattered in the peripheral area, trying to collect the corpses of the primordial grand cultivators lying in the void. If Yixian's actions were too obvious, he would be discovered at the first possible moment. Although he wasn't afraid, his original plan to hide in the dark and silently make a fortune would probably die prematurely. The depth of this desolate ancient world fragment was unknown, but the diameter or width of its periphery was about 400 to 500 million miles. Not every part of the boundless periphery was full of corpses of the primordial grand cultivators. All in all, the corpses of the primordial grand cultivators were mostly concentrated in the central area of the periphery. There were also corpses on the edges, but they were sparse and not dense. Also, the corpses of the primordial grand cultivators at the edges of the periphery were much weaker. Their auras were clearly weaker. Yixian's goal was to find the remains of the primordial life treasure that were located in the center of the outer region, within a radius of 100 million kilometers. Of course, he couldn't take them all away. He could only choose the larger ones with stronger auras and move them away. There were around 2 million corpses of the primordial grand cultivators in the central area. Judging from their auras, the weakest of them were Star Lords, and the strongest were primordial grand cultivators. As for the primordial grand cultivators like the golden divine dragon, Yixian didn't see any of them. Even if there were, they should be further ahead. As a matter of fact, there weren't too many corpses of the primordial grand cultivators. After a quick glance, Yixian estimated that there were around 300 corpses. 300 corpses was indeed a small proportion compared to the total number of corpses of the primordial grand cultivators. However, the corpses of the primordial grand cultivators were too valuable. It was already surprising that there were more than 300 of them. After all, the corpses of such treasures in Yixian's possession, including those obtained from the mysterious void where the void tortoise was hibernating, only amounted to 13 primordial sovereigns, more than 200 primordial sovereigns, and more than 200 primordial sovereigns and below. There were less than 500 corpses of the primordial grand cultivators above the immortal level. This time, the target that Yixian had chosen was also at the immortal realm. He couldn't be bothered to collect those below the immortal realm, and even if he did, he would only be able to fill the stomachs of the primordial turtle and the primordial porcupine and the other foodies. Although his strength had soared recently, and his original body had reached the universe level 1, it was obviously impossible for him to collect the corpses of those above the immortal level with his own strength. As for the corpses of the emperors, and primordial grand cultivators, it was needless to say. Just getting close to them would probably cause him to explode from the terrifying pressure. Chapter 4159. Yi Xian's spiritual energy was perfectly vibrating, and his level had already reached the advanced level. His personal strength had also reached the universe grade. Under such circumstances, after he used this secret technique, ordinary undyings who were only one level higher than him couldn't detect him at all. There were no traces at all. Only marquee-level undyings would be able to detect him if they investigated carefully. At this moment, although there were more than a dozen undyings in this desolate ancient fragment, there wasn't a single marquee-level undyings. But even so, Yi Xian didn't plan on picking an obvious target from the very beginning. Instead, he quietly circled around to a less conspicuous area, and started with the remains of the immortal realm treasure. With a thought, he secretly took away one of them and sent it into the Shenong cauldron within his body. Instantly. After that, he carefully made a few moves to test the power of the Shenong cauldron in his body. He used the method of telekinesis to take these undyings away, and the furthest he could go. After attacking more than 10 times, Yi Xian had a rough idea of what was going on. With such a method of telekinesis, the furthest distance he could maintain between him and the target was obviously affected by the target's cultivation level and was not constant. The stronger the energy of the undyings, the closer the distance he had to maintain in order to successfully take them away. Otherwise, if he was too far away, he wouldn't be able to move them at all. The furthest distance he could maintain when taking an undyings was about 10,000 miles. Marquee-level undyings were about 9,000 miles. Emperor-level undyings were 8,000 miles. Emperor-level undyings were 7,000 miles. Emperor-level undyings were 6,000 miles. As for what was above Emperor level, Yi Xian didn't know at all. However, for those undyings that were stronger than Emperor-level undyings but weren't that strong, he could take them away with telekinesis. The furthest distance he could maintain was about 5,000 miles. As for the remains of the Supreme Being of the Primordial Era, if Yi Xian wanted to collect them, even if he fully activated the domain power of the Shenong cauldron within his body, he would only be able to succeed within 1,000 miles of his target. After confirming the furthest distance to absorb the corpses of the various levels of treasures, Yi Xian took a deep breath. Without any hesitation, he began to wantonly plunder them. Often, in the blink of an eye, the remains of a certain primordial life treasure that was originally floating in the air were quietly taken away by him and sent into the undying world within his body. Inside the Shenong cauldron at first, he only collected the corpses of the 5 immortal realm warriors and made a fortune silently. In less than half a day, he had collected more than 1,000 corpses of the immortal realm warriors. More than 1,000 corpses of the 5 great realms of the immortal realm were a tremendous amount of top-grade flesh and blood. It sounded like a lot, but it was nothing compared to the nearly 2 million corpses in the Central Territory. As long as they were collected in a staggered manner, they wouldn't show their worth, because it was very difficult to be detected. Since the progress was so smooth, Yi Xian gradually relaxed and began to look at the corpses of the immortal realm warriors in the void. There were only about 300 corpses of this level of immortal realm warriors, and they were all extremely large in size. Compared to the corpses of the other levels, they were obviously more eye-catching. If they were so large, they would disappear just like that. If they weren't careful, they would be very likely to be discovered by the exploration fleets of the various races in the second universe wandering around the void, especially those immortal realm warriors who were either guarding the fleets or wandering in the void. These guys were at a loss. They had been in this place for a few days, and there were so many corpses of the immortal realm warriors in front of them and in the surrounding void. However, from the beginning to the end, they could only collect the corpses of the Star Lord, Domain Lord, and Sector Lord warriors. Even the immortal realm warriors had a very low success rate in collecting the corpses of the ordinary immortal realm warriors. As for the corpses of the immortal realm warriors above the immortal realm warriors, no one had successfully collected a single one in the past few days. Not to mention the immortal realm warriors. Even the immortal realm warriors couldn't get too close to the corpses of the immortal realm warriors. The pressure was too strong, and there was the danger of exploding. There was a treasure mountain in front of them, but they could only look on anxiously. Encountering such a situation was already frustrating enough. Under such circumstances, if they found out that Yi Xian easily collected the corpses of the Immortal Realm warriors, the Immortal Realm warriors present would probably be so angry. They might even vomit blood from anger. Among the 300 corpses of the Immortal Realm warriors, the 2 silver dragons and the black dragon were the largest. They were shining brightly and were too eye-catching. Although Yi Xian was moved and even envious, he didn't dare to make a move, at least not now. After thinking for a while, he chose a bloodjade spider of the Immortal Realm warrior level as his first target. The main reason was that its body was slightly smaller, only about 100 zhang in size. It wasn't too eye-catching, so the risk was almost zero. Relying on the protection of the Farmer God Cauldron's domain, Yi Xian carefully approached the bloodjade spider within 1,000 li of the bloodjade spider's corpse. After looking around and confirming that there weren't any Immortal Realm warriors paying attention to this area, he activated the Farmer God Cauldron's domain with all his strength. After locking onto the bloodjade spider, he quickly took action and directly collected it. The whole process was completed in a short tenth of a breath's time. Because of the Farmer God Cauldron's domain, this bloodjade spider disappeared into thin air without leaving any traces. It was directly sent into the treasure cauldron in Yi Xian's undying world. After a successful attempt, Yi Xian's spirit was greatly boosted. Needless to say, this sort of feeling was truly extraordinarily wonderful. Just like this, under the eyes of a group of Eternal Realm old monsters, he silently took away the treasures that they wanted but couldn't obtain, and he was even able to enjoy their extremely anxious yet helpless embarrassment. This matter wasn't just exciting, it was also moving. Kuang Shini was so beautiful that she was practically bubbling. After that, Yi Xian attacked several times in succession. In a short few hours he successfully collected the corpses of the Golden Moon True Toad, the Bloodjade Spider, the 6-winged Heavenly Demon Insect, and hundreds of other treasures of the primordial era. Of course, these were all relatively small existences, under 1,000 zhang in size, so no accidents happened. Unknowingly, there were only 300 or so Immortal Realm warriors' corpses in the void, and more than a third of them were collected by him. However, at this time, there were no more small targets. This also meant that the next collection would be much more risky. Chapter 4160. For the next day or so, Yi Xian had been wantonly collecting the remains of various primordial creatures. Including the previous harvest, after 1.5 days, he had collected more than 10,000 remains of primordial creatures in the Shunnong Cauldron, and all of them were above the immortal rank. Among them, there were more than 200 remains of primordial powerful beings. In total, there were more than 300 remains of primordial powerful beings. Among them, the small ones below 10,000 feet, and the medium ones between 10,000 feet to 10,000 feet had all been collected by him. Now there were only a few hundred remains of the primordial powerful beings that were more than 10,000 feet in size. In the central region of the outer region, there were a total of more than 2 million remains of various types. Yi Xian collected more than 10,000 of them. It sounded like a lot, but in reality it was only less than 1% of the total. Moreover, Yi Xian was staggered in his collection and did not focus on one area. In addition, the vanguard exploration fleets of the various races of the Second Universe that had entered this place had been busy collecting some Star Lord, Domain Lord, and even Sector Lord level targets. The number of treasure body remains in the void had been slowly decreasing, so his movements weren't seen through. Of course, this was also because he had always adhered to the principle of being cautious. Otherwise, no matter how few remains he collected, he would have been exposed long ago. Right now, more than 10,000 corpses of treasures above the immortal rank had been successfully collected, and Yi Xian had chosen the most valuable one. Even though there were still a lot of corpses in the air, most of them were existences below the immortal rank, so he didn't have much interest in them. After some consideration, he decided to collect the last few hundred remains of the primordial powerful beings that were more than 10,000 feet in size. Then, he left the outer region and entered deeper into the void of the primordial world fragment to look for other fortunes and opportunities. Although there were only a little over 100 of them left, they were all large treasured corpses that were over 100,000 feet in size. Once he collected them, the risk factor was so high that it even surpassed the sum of the 10,000 treasured corpses he had collected before. Realizing this, Yixian became even more careful. Not long after, he chose his target and immediately approached it quietly, maintaining a distance of less than 1,000 miles from his target. This time, his target was a purgatory blood phoenix. Although it could not be compared to the silver dragon and black dragon that were 100,000 feet and 200,000 feet in size, its size was not small. It was more than 30,000 feet, which was equivalent to 100,000 meters, which was equivalent to a starry sky fortress. If such a big fellow suddenly disappeared, the possibility of being detected was very high. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, Yixian waited for an entire meal before instantly making his move at a perfect time. He activated the power of the Shenong Cauldron's internal domain and stored the purgatory blood phoenix into the cauldron in the blink of an eye. As soon as all this was completed, in a void that was only hundreds of thousands of miles away from him, an immortal old monster from an unknown clan in the second universe seemed to have sensed something. He subconsciously turned his head and glanced at the area where Yixian was. Fortunately, it was a close call. This immortal old monster might have sensed something, but it was obviously very weak and hazy. After turning his head and glancing at this side, he quickly moved his eyes away. He did not investigate carefully, nor did he notice that there was a purgatory blood phoenix's remains that were missing from the primordial powerful beings. With a long sigh of relief, Yixian felt lucky. He quickly changed to another area and approached the second target more carefully. In this way, another day passed in the blink of an eye. At the same time, he had collected more than 10,000 remains of various creatures from the primordial era. But in the following day, he had successfully collected and sent into the internal space of the Shenong Cauldron, but there were only less than 30 remains of powerful beings from the primordial era. Compared with the two, the efficiency was simply too low. But fortunately, everything went smoothly. Until now, Yixian's actions had not been detected by any immortal old monster. However, even Yixian knew that it was only a matter of time before he was discovered, and it was basically coming. After all, in the central area of this area, there were only about 300 powerful beings from the primordial era. Now, the number had been sharply reduced to only about 70. If such a strange situation was not discovered, it would be really strange. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that there were only about a dozen immortal old monsters in the surrounding void, and that they basically did not rush around in the past 2.5 days. Instead, they stayed close to the remains of a powerful being from the primordial era, or a quasi-primordial era. They were concentrating on deducing and trying various methods to collect the remains. The inexplicable disappearance of more than 200 powerful beings from the primordial era had probably been discovered long ago. After a short while, Yixian came to the remains of a powerful being from the primordial era, a golden griffin. After waiting for more than 2 hours, when the time came, he immediately took action again without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, he had successfully collected the golden griffin into his body, the Shenong Cauldron. However, this time the expected exposure had finally arrived. Just as Yixian took action to collect the golden griffin, in a void millions of miles away from where he was, an immortal old monster happened to turn his head and look in this direction. He happened to see the strange scene of the golden griffin disappearing into thin air. Facing such a strange scene, this immortal old monster with a lion-like nose obviously felt a little confused. He even raised his hand to rub his eyes. Finally, when he fixed his eyes and confirmed that the golden griffin had really disappeared, he realized that something big had happened. His expression changed, and he turned his head to look in other directions in the void. This time, the lion-nosed immortal old monster was so shocked that his body trembled several times, and the expression on his face changed continuously. In less than half a breath, his face was as black as ink. In his mouth, there was a roar full of indignation and dissatisfaction. He suddenly howled, "Damn it, in just a day or two, how come there are only 70 or so remains of the more than 300 powerful beings from the primordial era in the void? Who did it? Eating alone without a word, such an appetite big, such a vicious mouth, this is not F***king thing." As this thunderous roar suddenly sounded, more than a dozen immortal old monsters, who were guarding the remains of a treasure in the distance, carefully studying and deducing the collection strategy, were suddenly alarmed. With a suspicious look on their faces, they turned their heads to look, and then they were slightly confused. Chapter 4161. With the roars and roars coming from all directions in the void, Yixian's heart skipped a beat. He quickly retreated, leaving the place where the golden griffin he had just collected was originally located. Almost in the next moment, the powerful divine senses of more than a dozen immortal old monsters covered the sky and earth. It was as if they were sweeping through this corner of the void, constantly probing and searching. Although Yixian was sure that with his current cultivation strength, he would definitely not be detected by the ordinary immortal old monsters, who were only one realm higher than him by activating the high-level perfect vibration of the spiritual power secret technique. But now, after all, there were more than a dozen immortal old monsters' powerful divine senses sweeping over at the same time. If there was a mistake, there would be no way to recover. With this cautious thought, Yixian retreated for more than 10 million miles before he stopped in relief. His face darkened, and he looked at the lion-nosed immortal old monster who had roared first. Although he had long known that the risk factor of every move he made would continue to increase, it was only a matter of time before he was finally exposed. But even so, when he was really exposed by the lion-nosed immortal old monster, Yixian couldn't help but feel very unhappy. It could even be said that he was so depressed that he was almost angry. It was all this red-headed, big-nosed old man's fault. Otherwise, he could have collected more than 10 or 20 corpses before he was exposed. But now this matter had been exposed. The remaining 70 or so corpses of the primordial old monsters that he hadn't collected in time would definitely be firmly held by the dozen immortal old monsters. If he wanted to make a move again, not only would the success rate plummet, but even the risk of being caught on the spot and exposed would instantly soar by countless times. After all, his perfect vibration of the spiritual power secret technique only perfectly concealed all the aura and traces of existence of Yixian. Although it couldn't be detected, he still existed. There were more than 10 immortal old monsters here. If they really found his approximate location, they would surround him and surround him. There were people surrounding him, and it was extremely likely that they would be able to find Yixian. It could be said that in this situation, the last 70 or so primordial supreme being level corpses were no longer suitable to be used. Once they reached out, there was at least a 40% chance that they would be surrounded. Thinking of this, Yixian immediately felt dejected, and a strong sense of unwillingness rose in his heart. These were the remains of top treasures from the primordial era. Each of them was a priceless treasure. Moreover, it wasn't just one or two of them but more than 70 of them. Giving them up like this would cause him great heartache. After pondering for a while, Yixian's mind suddenly flashed with a bright light. A bold idea gradually emerged in his mind. Out of caution, he forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed his state of mind. He carefully deduced for a while before finally confirming that this method was feasible, and his spirits were instantly refreshed. Old man, who told you to ruin this Star Lord's good deed? You asked for it, so don't blame this Star Lord for being so insidious. As he inwardly cursed, Yixian turned around and looked towards the void that was thousands of kilometers to the right. His gaze fell onto the lion-nosed immortal who had ruined his plans. As he sized him up, a mischievous smile slowly appeared on the corner of his mouth, and it became more and more intense. As soon as he finished speaking, Yixian's figure flashed once more, avoiding the 10 or so immortal realm old monsters that were roaring and roaring in the surrounding space. He took a big circle and quickly approached the lion-nosed immortal realm old monster. After a while, when he stopped again, he was already behind the lion-nosed undying, about 7,000 miles away. Afterwards, Yixian's gaze passed by the back of the lion-nosed immortal and landed on the remains of a treasure body 600 to 700 kilometers in front of him. As for the aura of this treasure body, it was at the level of an immortal emperor. If Yixian activated the domain of the Shen-known cauldron within him to absorb the emperor-level treasure body into the cauldron's space, he had to ensure that the distance between him and the target was no more than 8,000 miles. Right now, he was coincidentally within that distance 7,000 miles. He could successfully absorb the treasure, and also increase the distance between him and the lion-nosed undying. The moment he made a move, the chances of him successfully retreating from this area would be maximized. Right now, the 10 undying in this space fragment were all from the various races of the second universe. It was inevitable for them to be suspicious of each other. And they were all normal undyings. They could only absorb normal undyings, and the success rate wasn't very high. As for higher-level treasures, not to mention Emperor-level undyings, even official-level undyings couldn't be absorbed. Previously, these dozen or so Immortal Realm old monsters had all been guarding the remains of a high-level treasure. They were focused on deducing and experimenting with all sorts of methods in order to find a way to collect a higher-level target. If not for that, they wouldn't have only noticed Yixian's actions at this moment. What Yixian needed to do now was to take away the remains of the Immortal Emperor rank treasure that was several hundred kilometers in front of this lion-nosed immortal. And to do so, he had to do it openly. Simply put, the moment the target was absorbed and the moment it shot towards the lion-nosed undying, he had to intentionally reveal a flaw in the domain of the Shun-known cauldron, allowing the other 10 undyings to see through it. The undyings could clearly see through it. Afterwards, when the target passed by the lion-nosed immortal's body and shot towards Yixian's location, he quickly concealed this flaw that he had intentionally revealed. If he did that, the other 10 undyings in the surrounding space would only see the Emperor-level treasure body flying towards the lion-nosed undying and disappearing right in front of him. However, they wouldn't be able to see the trajectory of the treasure body flying towards Yixian and being absorbed into the Shun-known cauldron within him. With one look, it was obvious that the corpse had been taken away by the lion-nosed undying. This was the remains of an undying Emperor-level treasure. None of the other undying old monsters could move it, but only he could do it. Just this alone was enough to make the other undying old monsters think of many things. For example, if he could absorb an Emperor-level undyings, why couldn't he absorb a Desolate-level undyings? This was clearly because he had some sort of secret technique, or had some sort of special treasure. Once this thought appeared in the bottom of his heart, even if he didn't have any strong evidence, it was impossible for him to easily dispel it in a short time. In short, this big black pot was definitely going to be the lion-nosed immortal. The more than 200 corpses of the primordial almighty treasures that had mysteriously disappeared would all be counted. Chapter 4162. At this moment, after Yixian secretly made a move, he quickly left and dodged to the distance in another direction. In the space around the lion-nosed immortal, angry roars and roars instantly sounded out. The dozen or so undying beings from the various races of the second universe roared and charged at the lion-nosed undying being, who had a stunned expression on his face. "Old lion monster, you are really generous. You actually hid it from all of us." "That's right. It's fortunate that you were the first one to notice the abnormality. After all this time, it turns out that it was a thief crying thief. If it weren't for the fact that I was itching to make a move and was caught red-handed, we would have been fooled by you. You're so greedy. You're so greedy. Old lion, tell us the secret method you used to collect the remains of the supreme primordial era treasures. Let's share it. In addition, the 200 or so remains of the supreme primordial era treasures you secretly collected must be taken out as well. Let's share them equally. Hurry up and take them out. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning against you." In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen Immortal Realm old monsters had approached. All of them were furious, and their eyes were extremely unfriendly. Some even said that they were extremely fierce. After all, they were all undying old monsters of their own races. When had they ever been fooled like this? Besides, the race behind the lion-nosed undying old monster was not very powerful in the second universe. Although they were not ranked below the top 100, they were at the bottom of the top 100 races. At present, more than a dozen Immortal Realm old monsters were roaring, and half of them were from the top 10 of the second universe. Although they were all Immortal Realm cultivators, the strength of the clans behind them was deep, so they naturally had more confidence. The lion-nosed undying old monster had no doubt that if he couldn't give them an explanation today, the dozens of undying old monsters would definitely attack him without hesitation. They might even tear him apart alive. Thinking of this, the lion-nosed undying old monster was so shocked that he trembled and almost burst into tears. Friends, can't we just talk it out? This is really a F***king misunderstanding. This old man is being wrongly accused. Hey old lion, you're still trying to quibble with the evidence. That's right. I saw the remains of the undying old monster turn into a beam of light and rush toward you. It didn't disappear until it was right in front of you. If you didn't collect it, could it be that it chased after you automatically? Old lion monster, we saw this with our own eyes. Beside you and even in the void far away, there was no second figure other than you. Under such circumstances you still want to deny it? Do you really think we can be bullied? Roar. Don't talk nonsense with him. Since he doesn't know what's good for him, just suppress him. Everyone, let's attack him together. We don't have much time. We have to collect the remains in the void. Where? You. And let. Seeing that his explanation was useless, the lion-nosed undying old monster wasn't stupid. He couldn't just stand there and wait to be suppressed. He saw that the undying old monsters were getting closer and closer. Not only did they not listen to his explanation, they even shouted the words suppress and kill. Such a scene made the lion-nosed undying old monster's face turn pale. He didn't dare to stay any longer. He turned around and started to escape. In such a situation, he had no choice but to escape. Being the scapegoat was better than being suppressed and losing his life, right? In this way, the super big black pot that had just been put on his head was undoubtedly confirmed. The dozen or so immortal realm old monsters that were swarming in the void were completely furious. While chasing in the void, they kept roaring, and the entire void of the universe was slightly trembling. 10 immortal realm old monsters, who were swarming in the void, were completely enraged. The consequences of several undying old monsters going berserk at the same time were very serious. If they didn't handle it well, the void would collapse. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it only took a few breaths of time. In this vast void, in addition to the dozen or so immortal realm old monsters from the various races of the second universe, there were also dozens of vanguard exploration fleets of various races. The scale was not small. These starships and more powerful beings of various races were busy collecting the remains of the Cosmic Lord, Domain Lord, and Sector Lord treasures in the void. At this moment, the sudden change of events made the space tremble with the roars of more than a dozen immortal realm old monsters. All of them were startled and fled in all directions, trying to avoid the immortal realm old monsters who were chasing and escaping in circles. They didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. In the blink of an eye, the entire universe was in chaos. However, not all of the undying beings were convinced that the lion-nosed undying being was the culprit. Among the 10 or so undying beings, 3 or 4 of them quickly regained their composure. Although they were still chasing the lion-nosed undying being, their roars and roars had disappeared. Instead, they were warning the lion-nosed undying being. The lion-nosed undying old monster, and the other undying old monsters had calmed down. This wasn't the result that Yi Xian wanted. If these undying old monsters really calmed down, he wouldn't have the chance to take the remaining 70 or so undying old monster corpses. Thinking of this, Yi Xian didn't hesitate any longer. His figure dashed out, and while carefully maintaining a perfect concealment of his aura, he quickly approached an area that was only 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers away from the lion-nosed immortal. He hung around him like a tail, waiting for an opportunity to attack again. Soon the chance came. At this moment, the undying old monster's words seemed to have worked. The other undying old monsters who were chasing the lion-nosed undying old monsters all slowed down after a slight hesitation. Seeing this, the lion-nosed undying old monster who was running away let out a sigh of relief. He paused and stopped. He looked around and quickly chose an undying old monster corpse that was about 100 miles away. Fellow friends, let me explain this matter slowly. That body wasn't mine. I've been wronged. If you don't believe me, just look at it. Isn't that just an emperor body? I'll take it now and prove it. You'll know once you see. Just as he finished speaking, the lion-nosed undying being had already made his move. His aura surged out from his body, and one could feel it even with their eyes closed. It was definitely not just for show. Seeing this, Yi Xian grinned. He was waiting for the best chance, but he didn't expect the lion-nosed undying old monster to be so considerate. Since he was so cooperative, if he didn't make a move now, it would be unreasonable. Chapter 4163. Silence. A deathly silence. Just a moment ago, the other dozen or so undying old monsters almost believed his words when they saw the lion-nosed undying being speak so confidently and even prove it on the spot. At this moment, the remains of the Emperor Immortal turned into a ray of light as the lion-nosed immortal waved his hand. The dozen or so immortal old monsters and even more immortal experts in the surrounding void all gaped in shock. Their mouths were agape. Everyone's face was filled with a sluggish expression in an instant, as if they had just been struck by lightning. Even the lion-nosed Undying himself was completely petrified, staring blankly at the right hand that was still raised, his mind rumbling non-stop. This time, Yixian still removed the concealment effect of the field within the Shinong cauldron from the moment the target was captured until the distance in front of the lion-nosed immortal cultivator's body. He purposely revealed a flaw, so that everyone in the distant void could see it clearly. Immediately after, the instant the treasure body's remains arrived in front of the lion-nosed immortal, Yixian quickly adjusted the power of the Shinong cauldron's domain and concealed the flaws that he had intentionally revealed earlier. This scene was the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone in the space witnessed that this emperor-level treasure body was easily taken away by the lion-nosed Undying in one move. Something's not right. Something's not right. Which bastard is trying to harm me? Come out now. I just raised my hand and you're up to no good. What kind of grudge do you have against me? Whoa, why are you targeting this old man? After being stunned for a while, the lion-nosed Undying regained his senses and his face turned green. He jumped and cursed while looking at the dozen or so undying old monsters in the distance. This time he was really about to cry. He frowned as if he had just been hit by frost. Everyone, please don't be fooled by appearances. I did try to take it away again, but I didn't succeed. What you saw wasn't done by me. You've gone too far. Old lion monster, if I don't kill you today, I won't rest. You've gone too far. You're treating me like a monkey. What's the point of wasting time with him? Let's do it, everyone. The moment the lion-nosed Undying finished, the dozen or so Undyings in the distance all roared in anger. This time, even the ones who had advised both sides to stay calm were furious, gritting their teeth. Even though they didn't say anything, they were the first to charge out towards the lion-nosed Undying. We're finished. All our mouths are useless. Seeing this, the lion-nosed Undying almost crumbled on the spot. In despair, he didn't even have the will to explain himself. He turned and fled without another word. Rumble! Rumble! After being toyed with and humiliated twice in a row, the Undyings of various races who didn't know the truth felt as though their chests were about to explode. Even their pursuit this time was completely different from before. As they chased in space, they didn't hesitate to attack from time to time. Even if they were separated by a considerable distance, they would not hesitate to launch an energy bombardment, as if they only wanted to vent and enjoy themselves. This was clearly the rhythm of a complete rampage. More than 10 immortal old monsters, without exception, almost went crazy with anger. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yixian had already quickly retreated far away, not wanting to get close to this group of crazy chasing and escaping immortal realm old monsters. While they were busy in the west, Yixian went to the east, specifically choosing a quiet place to settle down and fish in troubled waters. As long as no one was paying attention, he would immediately take action and quickly obtain a treasure body. Wreckage. Furthermore, every single one of them was of the desolation level, not even quasi-desolation level. He had already collected enough of them. Time passed by slowly. Soon more than an hour had passed. During this period of time, the vast void in front of them was bustling with activity. More than a dozen immortal realm old monsters chased after them like crazy. However, the lion-nosed old monster was an immortal realm old monster after all, and the void was vast enough. It was obviously impossible to do anything to him in a short time. As for Yixian, he was still waiting for the right opportunity to take action. Unbeknownst to him, half of the remaining 70 or so corpses of the primordial era were taken away by him. There were only a little more than 30 primordial era experts left in the void. Wait, fellow Taoists, please stop. It seems that half of the primordial era treasure body remains have disappeared. It wasn't until now that the rage had gotten to their heads. The Undyings that had lost their rationality and were on the brink of insanity finally regained their senses. No one knew who shouted first, but the other Undyings that seemed to have woken up from a dream all turned to look around, after which their bodies shook violently as they roared again. Damn it, in such a short time, half of the primordial era treasure body remains have disappeared. There were more than 70 corpses just now. This is definitely not the work of the lion old monster. Faced with the crazy pursuit of more than a dozen immortals of the same level, he had no chance to take action at all. We've all been deceived. The lion old monster is obviously the scapegoat. At the same time, he attracted our attention, and the hidden mastermind took the opportunity to take action. Roar! Who is it? Who is it? I'm going to tear him apart. Come out now. We were too careless. More than a dozen immortals were fooled by someone right under our noses. How can we endure this? Old Lion is really a piece of *T. He's really a piece of *T. Only you know the truth. Why didn't you tell us the truth when you knew we were fooled? It's all because of you. As these roars rang out, the group of Immortal Realm old monsters immediately stopped their pursuit and spread out their divine sense at the first possible moment, constantly sweeping the surrounding void to investigate, meticulously not letting go of any trace of what was going on. From the beginning to the end, I'm the most wronged victim, okay? Far away in the void ahead, the lion-nosed old monster, who had been so tired that he was panting, could finally stop and take a breath. He muttered to himself with an inexplicable look of grief and indignation on his face. A group of shameless old men, how dare they blame me? How immoral! Walala! Hua! Just as the 10 or so immortal old monsters from the various clans of the second universe were suddenly enlightened, they spread out their divine sense and searched the entire void crazily. At this time, the clear sound of chains rattling suddenly sounded without warning at this time. Along with the familiar sound of chains rattling, from the direction of the entrance passage of the mysterious ancient world fragment, a huge bronze cauldron, which was not weaker than any of the superstars, was rapidly approaching. The netherworld cauldron, which came from the first universe, finally rushed into the collapsed ancient world, bringing with it endless ferocious flames. It completely descended. Chapter 4164. Walala. Boom. Rumble. The netherworld furnace descended, and as soon as it arrived, it was like the end of the world. The 20,000 rune chains outside the walls of the cauldron waved endlessly, and some entangled the remains of the primordial creatures in the void, directly taking them away and throwing them into the internal space of the netherworld furnace. And some rune chains launched an attack like a giant python in the starry sky, lashing out at the battleships of the vanguard explorers of the various races in the second universe, causing these battleships to explode in an instant, turning into fireballs, illuminating the void. All of this happened too quickly, and the change was shocking. In the blink of an eye, the netherworld furnace had cleared a large area of the void, destroying at least thousands of battleships of the various races in the second universe. As for the remains of the primordial creatures that were taken into the netherworld furnace, there were even more, tens of thousands of them. Obviously, destroying these battleships was just a matter of convenience. The netherworld furnace's main purpose was to collect the remains of the primordial creatures in the void. The moment Yi Xian looked back, he happened to see the remains of 2 primordial creatures being collected by the netherworld furnace without any suspense, disappearing in the blink of an eye. His pupils shrank in an instant. Although he had collected more than 10,000 corpses of the desolation creatures, and more than 300 of them were at the desolation level. Although there were still many corpses left in this void, there were only a few at the desolation level. There were only 30 of them. In fact, Yi Xian's side had already decided to give up on the last 30 or so corpses of the primordial era's supreme beings. Even so, when he saw the netherworld furnace plundering the corpses of various levels so quickly and recklessly, he still felt incomparably indignant and suffocated. The key was that not only was the other party's efficiency extremely high, but its posture was also a little too domineering. Compared to Yi Xian, who took more than 2 days to collect more than 10,000 primordial creatures' remains, forget it. Compared to the netherworld furnace, only people would be angered to death. Damn it, you dare to be more monstrous than this Star Master. One day I will take you. Yi Xian glared fiercely at the netherworld cauldron. Without further delay, his figure flashed and he directly rushed toward the silver dragon on the right side of the void. At the same time, the lion-nosed old monster and more than 10 other undying old monsters of the second universe, who had been searching frantically in the void, were all roaring in fear. Damn it, are you all stupid? Avoid it, quickly avoid it. Rice bucket. A bunch of rice buckets. He clearly saw the furnace rushing over, but he actually stayed in the same place and waited for death. What a pity for the remains of those treasured bodies. I've worked hard for nearly 3 days and finally collected some corpses below the immortal rank. Now I've lost at least 1/10 of them. Evacuate. Evacuate immediately. Take the remains of the treasured body that have been stored in the battleship and rush out. Return to the clan and we will discuss further. At this moment, these 10 undying old monsters' hearts were bleeding. In the past 3 days, even though they had been thinking of a way to collect the remains of the immortal rank and above treasured bodies, the clan fleets they had brought had been collecting the remains of the Star Lord, Domain Lord and Sector Lord level treasured bodies without stopping for a single moment. There were even some normal immortal rank remains that they would occasionally take action to collect. After successfully collecting them, they would either keep them in their bodies or send them to their battleships for storage. However, now, in the blink of an eye, the Netherworld Cauldron had destroyed close to 10,000 battleships. Every race was affected. Every battleship's destruction represented a huge loss that far exceeded the battleship itself. It would be strange if they didn't feel heartache. Very quickly, following the orders of the 10 Undyings, all the space battleships in the surrounding space all changed directions. As they circled around to avoid the Netherworld Cauldron, they all headed back to where they had come from 3 days ago. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was still using his mental force secret technique to perfectly conceal his aura, finally arrived in front of the silver dragon that was over 100,000 meters long. Looking around, seeing that the 10 undying old monsters weren't paying attention to him, he swiftly made his move. In the blink of an eye, he successfully stored the enormous silver dragon into the Shun-known cauldron within him, after which Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. With a flash of his body, he charged towards the final target, which was the enormous golden dragon that was over 200,000 m long. One had to say the timely arrival of the Netherworld Cauldron from a certain point of view was a huge help to Yi Xian. Whether it was the silver dragon that had already been captured or the golden dragon that Yi Xian was about to attack, they were both enormous in size. If the Netherworld Cauldron didn't suddenly arrive and disrupt the situation, attracting the attention of the 10 Undyings, Yi Xian would definitely be discovered the moment he made his move. Although he wasn't afraid even if he was discovered, he had been so careful and forcefully held on for nearly 3 days. At the very last moment he was still exposed, which was quite depressing. At this moment, after successfully storing the silver dragon, Yi Xian immediately rushed to the golden dragon on the other side of the void. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention, he suddenly waved his hand. In the blink of an eye, he stored the remains of the 200,000 m long golden dragon into the Shun-known cauldron. This time his actions were finally discovered. Damn it, that guy hiding in the dark is actually still here. Millions of miles away, an undying old monster from an unknown race in the second universe happened to turn his head and saw the scene of the golden dragon that was lying across the void in front of him mysteriously disappearing. After being slightly stunned, this old guy was so angry that he almost vomited blood. It could be said that he flew into a rage. As he roared, he turned around and shot towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at him coldly. He wasn't interested in paying attention to him at all. The last target, the golden dragon, had already been successfully stored into the internal space of the Shun-known cauldron. He only stayed behind to watch the show. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party hadn't arrived yet, he immediately turned around and fled. With a flash of his body, he rushed into the depths of this mysterious ancient world. His figure quickly disappeared. Roar! Roar! Damn it! Damn it, he escaped again. Roar! The furious undying old monster investigated and searched, but in the end, he couldn't find any trace of the other party. After realizing that the other party had successfully escaped far away, he immediately roared again, his voice shaking the void. Walala! Hua! Chapter 4165. The Netherworld stove was so famous that even the undying old monsters didn't dare to face it head-on. Following its unexpected arrival, the Vanguard exploration fleet of the various races of the second universe was the first to enter this mysterious desolate world. After the initial chaos, they quickly restored order and avoided the area where the dark stove was wantonly wreaking havoc. They took a detour and rushed to the entrance of this desolate world. Even the lion-nosed old monster and the other undying old monsters couldn't do anything in the face of the netherworld stove's monstrous flames. They sighed from time to time and followed. This time they entered this mysterious desolate world as the vanguard fleet of the various races of the second universe to explore. Until now, the final result could be said to be nothing. Instead, they returned with a stomach full of resentment. In addition to the raging aura of the netherworld stove after its sudden arrival, what made them feel even more resentful was the hidden culprit behind the scenes. He didn't know when that guy had followed them in. He couldn't even be sure if he had come in from the outside world, or if he was a native of this mysterious world, or if he had come here through some other means. But one thing was for sure, and that was, he hid in the dark and used some unknown method to completely hide his aura. Then, he quietly took away the remains of the treasured bodies of the desolate creatures. There were even more than 300 primordial expert-level corpses, including the 2 silver dragon and golden dragon that were over 100,000 feet and 200,000 feet respectively. Then, how could he not have collected the corpses of the primordial experts and below? What was more infuriating was that after this guy was exposed, he actually framed the lion-nosed old monster, and almost caused them to turn against each other on the spot. Every time they thought of this, the undying old monsters from the various races of the second universe felt suffocated. They couldn't breathe and couldn't wait to immediately turn around and continue the search. No matter what, they had to find this abominable guy and torture him to death. But this was obviously extremely irrational. Facing the chaotic and worrisome situation in front of them, they had to immediately return to their races and report everything. They also had to try their best to find 1 or 2 treasures that could take the remains of the desolate creatures' level treasured bodies at will like the netherworld stove. Then they could turn around and kill. Otherwise it was useless to stay here. Not to mention that all the remains of the treasured bodies in the outer area would soon be taken away by the netherworld stove. Even without this, the remains of the treasured bodies were still lying in the void, and they still couldn't take them away. They could only watch and feel anxious. With this thought in mind, the group of Immortal Realm old monsters arrived at the entrance and waved their hands, giving the order to all the fleets under their command to retreat. Then, without any hesitation, they rushed toward the entrance in front of them one after another. However, a scene that no one had expected occurred. Whether it was the undyings of the various races in the second universe or the various fleets behind them, they were all teleported to the void region behind them without exception after entering the entrance in front of them. It was as if he had run into a reverse spatial tunnel. He was charging forward, but in the end, his vision blurred, and he reappeared not in the domain of Shadow Devil of the second universe, but in the mysterious primordial heaven and earth behind him. Some of the battleships were even unlucky enough to be transmitted to the area where the netherworld stove was wreaking havoc. The result was as expected. Before everyone in the battleships could react, the battleships they were in were instantly destroyed by the netherworld stove. This scene was really too strange, but it was not completely incomprehensible. Obviously, this mysterious entrance to the desolate era, which was 20 to 30 million kilometers wide in the domain of Shadow Devil of the second universe, was a one-way starry passage that could only be entered but not exited. The reason for this must have something to do with this mysterious desolate era. But all this was not important anymore. What was important was that they couldn't get out at all. They couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Damn it, what kind of lousy place is this? Isn't it too overbearing to allow people to enter but not leave? It seems that we can't leave for the time being. We'll think of another way later. After all, the main forces of our races will be here soon. By then, the fleets of the various races will be larger and more prepared. I hope they will bring 1 or 2 heavy artifacts that can collect the remains of the treasured bodies of the powerful figures of the desolate world. Come here, treasure. We can't leave anyway. Why don't we go back? There's no need to waste time on the netherworld stove. It will only increase the casualties. I think the evil mastermind must have thought the same. He should have left and gone deeper. Let's go after him right away. All battleships turn around immediately. Let's go. Hong Long Long. Following the orders of the undying old monsters, the fleets of various races that had just gathered started to turn around. Then they started to move at full speed and gathered into an enormous fleet of more than 3 million starships of various types. After bypassing the area where the netherworld stove was raging in front of them, from the edge of one side, They sailed into the depths of the void of this mysterious, desolate world. They gradually moved further and further away and disappeared. Half a day later, the remains of the treasured bodies of the desolate creatures in the outer area of the void had basically been collected. The netherworld stove also turned into a ray of light and shot further ahead. What was left in the void was only the wreckage of a large number of starships that had been destroyed by the netherworld furnace. They were still burning quietly. The vast void of the universe around them was so silent that it was terrifying. Not long after, the second batch of main forces from the various races of the second universe arrived one after another. After seeing the tragic scene in the outer area and the empty void in front of them, the main forces from the various races of the second universe did not stay for long. They had all arrived at the same time. They all rushed to the depths of the front. Following that, this area was unusually quiet for a few days. However, this rare silence was quickly broken again. The large fleets from the races of the first universe and the human race of the third universe, as well as the Senate of the Wanluo Federation, arrived one after another. They rushed into this mysterious desolate world from the entrance of the passage outside. These top races and forces from the other two main planes of the starry sky did not hesitate at all. After a brief investigation, they also rushed to the deeper area ahead. Chapter 4166. In a flash, 10 days had passed in the blink of an eye. 10 days ago, Yi Xian was at the periphery of this mysterious desolate world. After absorbing the last target, which was the remains of the golden dragon, which was more than 200,000 feet in size, into his body, he immediately left, heading deeper into the void of this mysterious desolate world without any hesitation. Shooting away, in his opinion, since the void of this mysterious desolate world was filled with so many remains of the desolate world's treasured bodies. Then in the deeper hinterland and other areas further ahead, the treasured body resources that could be seen everywhere in the void must be even more amazing. There was even a high chance that there would be other opportunities and fortunes. In short, even he, like all the other experts who had entered the desolate world, was certain that this exploration of the otherworldly space would definitely be an amazing journey of harvest. However, reality and ideals often ran counter to one's wishes. Reality and ideals often ran counter to one's wishes. For an entire 10 days, Yi Xian had maintained a speed that was close to the limit. He had determined a direction and flew through the air at an extremely fast speed. In the end, he even took out the Void Hole shuttle, and his speed instantly increased by several times. But up until now, he still hadn't gained anything. After leaving the periphery of the desolate world, in the void of the universe, not only did he not see any remains of the desolate world's treasured bodies, even a slightly complete star was rarely seen. As for the life planets, that was even more impossible. Along the way, although there were indeed stars of various sizes scattered in the void of the universe like a normal universe plane, these stars were all damaged without exception. Some had even completely collapsed into a pile of different sizes. The star fragments were gone, just like that, floating in the void, exuding a strong aura of destruction. These stars were most likely destroyed in the desolate world's unparalleled battle that had destroyed the entire desolate world. It was also possible that after that, when this corner of the desolate world was drifting in the endless void, it was due to some unforeseen events such as void turbulence, starfield collision, and so on. Destroy, however, to Yi Xian, none of this was important. His greatest wish right now was to be able to see the endless remains of the primordial life form treasure in a certain part of the universe in front of him, or a ball of life. Even if the creatures living on this planet were all savage beasts who had yet to develop intelligence, it would be fine. At the very least, he wouldn't be as lost and disappointed as he was now. If he were to know that before he entered this mysterious desolate world, apart from the vanguard exploration fleet of the various races of the second universe, who were lingering at the edge of the previous periphery and trying to collect the remains of the treasure body, there were no other survivors. Even earlier, the first to enter this place was actually a small fleet of more than 100 battleships from the Devil clan, as well as the former clan leader of the Devil clan, the old monster who was now a sector lord, Emperor. The unease and apprehension in Yi Xian's heart was probably even more intense. Emperor and the small fleet commanded by 7 clearly didn't linger around the periphery of the vast amount of remains of the primordial life forms. They had undoubtedly taken the lead and entered the depths of the primordial world even earlier than the rest. With Yi Xian's speed, He should have caught up to them long ago. But in reality, he had traveled for an entire 10 days, and apart from the occasional broken star in the void, he hadn't encountered anything else. This matter was very strange, but it could also be because this mysterious desolate world was too vast. Yin Emperor and the small fleet of the Yin Devil clan were moving in a different direction from Yixian, and they had unknowingly missed each other. But no matter what, if Yixian knew about this matter, he would more or less be a little vigilant. But now, his entire mind was troubled by the seemingly endless monotonous scene in front of him. His mind was in turmoil and he didn't have the mind to think about anything else. This kind of extremely boring journey in the void continued. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. When Yixian's patience was about to be completely exhausted, the angry roar of a vicious beast finally came from the void of the universe in front of him. This vicious beast's angry roar entered Yixian's ears, and to him, it was no different from the sound of nature. No, it was even more pleasing to the ear than the sound of nature. It almost instantly revived him on the spot, and his dispirited spirit was instantly refreshed. Without any hesitation, he immediately activated the void-shattering shuttle, and followed the direction of the vicious beast's roar. The void-shattering shuttle shot in the direction of the vicious beast's angry roar, at an extremely fast speed. As he got closer and closer, the movement in the void in front of him became clearer and clearer. In addition to the occasional vicious beast's roar, there were clearly some booming sounds. Listening to the sound, it should be caused by the attack of a magical weapon or the bombardment of a ship's cannon. Obviously, there was a fierce battle going on in the distant void in front of him. The two sides of the fierce battle, one side was an unknown number of vicious beasts in the starry sky, and the other side, since they could use magical weapons to attack or drive warships to bombard, even if they weren't humans, at least they were a high-level life form with extremely high intelligence. Furthermore, considering that this world originated from the distant and mysterious primordial age, it was basically impossible for there to be scientific and technological forces that only existed in the present age. Therefore, more than 80% of the violent explosions that came from the front should be caused by the release of a magical weapon. In other words, more than a month after entering this mysterious desolate world, in a distant void in front of him, there finally appeared indigenous creatures who were suspected to be survivors of the desolate era. Moreover, their cultivation and strength seemed to be quite good, and their numbers were definitely not small. Thinking of this, Yixian suddenly became more excited. After more than a month of hard work, he finally found someone he could inquire about. Regardless of whether the other party was a survivor of the primordial era or not, his identity as a native was definitely undeniable. Since he was a native, he must have some understanding of this world. This was of great significance to Yixian. At the very least, this kind of aimless, lost, and boring journey through the stars should be coming to an end. With this kind of excitement, Yixian steered the void-shattering shuttle at top speed for half a day. In the distance of the void, where the explosions and the roars of the vicious beasts came from, a rather dim light finally appeared. This gloomy light was like a membrane. Looking through it, one's field of vision was blurry, as if they were gazing into another world. Chapter 4167. Whoosh! With a faint sound of breaking through the air, the void-shattering shuttle, which had reached its maximum speed, rushed out of the huge gray light screen in front of it. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived at another part of the universe outside the light screen. This place was indeed like another world. Even the light was much brighter in an instant. Previously, Yixian had traveled all the way here. In the mysterious and ancient world behind the gray light screen, all the stars were dilapidated. There was not a single star that was still emitting light. Naturally, the light was dim, and the new world in front of him was basically not much different from the three main starry skies that Yixian had come into contact with before. There were all kinds of stars and stars. It was just that the aura of this world was clearly very old, revealing a strong sense of desolation. It wasn't until the void-shattering shuttle rushed out of that gigantic gray light screen and entered this new world that was filled with a dense and ancient aura, that he suddenly realized that before entering, he had actually forgotten to activate the concealment formation of the void-shattering shuttle. The concealment array of the void-shattering shuttle had always been active. However, as Yixian traveled alone in the dark and desolate world behind the screen of light, he didn't encounter a single life planet for a long time. As he gradually became impatient, he closed the concealment array of the void-shattering shuttle. Because of this, the void-shattering shuttle, which was originally in a concealed state, revealed itself. In the subsequent space travel, if a life form appeared in a certain part of the universe, even if he did not detect the existence of the other party, it was very likely that the other party would take the initiative to approach the void-shattering shuttle after discovering it. But now, the serious consequences of this small oversight were obviously something that Yi Xian did not expect before this. In the void about 1,000,000 miles in front of him, there was a great battle in space. The commotion that Yi Xian heard from behind the gray light screen happened here, and was transmitted through the huge gray light screen. The fact that the commotion of the great battle could be transmitted to such a distant part of the universe showed that the scale and intensity of this space battle was very shocking. However, it took some time for Yi Xian to rush over. Furthermore, no one knew exactly when this interstellar battle had started. Therefore, at this moment, this astonishing interstellar battle was about to end. It had entered its final stages. As for the two sides of the battle, it was just as Yi Xian had guessed. One side was the ferocious beasts of the stars, and the other side was the humans. To be more precise, it should be the survivors of the primordial era. In this battle, the side of the astral beasts had clearly lost. At this time, in the void nearly 100 miles away, the remains of astral beasts of all sizes could be seen everywhere. All of them were damaged, and a thick smell of blood floated in the starry sky. Yi Xian was nearly 100 miles away, and he was still in the void-shattering shuttle. Everyone inside could clearly smell it. With a casual glance, he roughly determined that there were at least tens of thousands of ferocious starry sky corpses in the void. After all, the ferocious starry sky corpses that had been killed first had most likely been taken into storage treasures by the victorious party. This was obviously a large-scale interstellar hunting operation. Tens of thousands of astral beasts were hunted on a large scale, and the survivors of the primordial era on the victorious side were the hunters of the hunt. To be able to carry out such a large-scale interstellar hunting operation, and to end it successfully in the end, it was obvious that the number of survivors of the primordial era on the hunter's side was definitely not too small. According to Yi Xian's estimation, at least a dozen large tribes of survivors of the primordial era participated in this large-scale interstellar hunting operation, because in the hunting void nearly 1,000,000 miles away, a large number of survivors of the primordial era gathered around the central region where countless remains of astral beasts were lying across. It could be seen that they had roughly formed a dozen distinct groups. He didn't know much about these survivors of the primordial era and their various situations, so he referred to them as tribes for the time being. These dozen tribes, each tribe had more than 100,000 survivors of the primordial era. In other words, the total number of survivors of the primordial era who participated in this large-scale interstellar hunting operation in the entire void was more than 1,000,000. Moreover, these more than 1,000,000 survivors of the primordial era, who belonged to more than a dozen large tribes, were clearly all experts of the starry sky. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stay in the void of the universe with their physical bodies. More than 1,000,000 experts of the starry sky hunting less than 100,000 astral beasts in the void. As long as the disparity in strength between the two sides wasn't too great, then the final result of the battle would belong to the side with more people, obviously without any suspense. On the side of the tens of thousands of astral beasts that were almost completely wiped out, the strongest experts that Yi Xian sensed were only at the sector lord level, and there were only 6 of them. 4 of them had already fallen, and only 2 of them were still leading 2 small groups of astral beasts, struggling bitterly. As for the more than 1,000,000 survivors of the primordial era, who gathered around the tens of thousands of astral beasts and the remains of the astral beasts, in terms of strength, there wasn't even a single universe-level existence, not to mention the undying old monsters. It was completely impossible, otherwise this battle would have ended from the beginning. How could it have lasted for so long? Among the more than 1,000,000 survivors of the primordial era, the strongest one was also at the sector lord level, but there were 2 more of them than the astral beasts, a total of 8 sector lord level existences. The rest of the survivors of the primordial era had different strengths, but they were basically at the 8th realm of the starry sky, which was the black hole realm and above. Otherwise, they were basically not qualified to participate in such a large-scale interstellar battle. Because the scale of this interstellar space hunt was too large, and the battle wasn't completely over yet, And because the other tribes of the primordial era who were gathered in other directions were further away from the huge light screen that Yixian had rushed out from. Of course, the most important thing was that Yixian's space-shattering shuttle wasn't very big, only about 300 meters long, which was the captain of the shuttle. And when he rushed out of the huge light screen, it only caused a faint sound of breaking through the air, but didn't cause too much of a commotion. All these factors added together led to the fact that the number of survivors of the primordial era who had rushed out of the huge light screen at the first moment was actually not many. It was just a small group of people from a large tribe closest to the huge light screen, about 1,000 people, definitely not more than 2,000. Chapter 4168. Seeing the void-shattering shuttle suddenly rushing out of a huge dark light screen, these over 1,000 people who were originally heading in this direction to collect the remains of a relatively large ferocious star beast, after being stunned for a moment, they quickly cried out involuntarily one after another. Look, from the abyss of sin ahead, a monster rushed out. What monster? It's obviously a big insect. It can grow to such a size, so it shouldn't be too weak. Everyone be careful. Strange, why can't I sense any aura of cultivation in this big insect? There's not even a bit of ferocious aura. It seems to be different from ordinary insects. That's why it's a monster. Although I can't sense any aura of cultivation, judging from the luster of its shell, it must be extremely hard. This insect is not easy to deal with. Get into formation immediately. Get into formation, surround and kill this strange insect from the abyss of sin. These words, word by word, were all clearly heard by Yixian. In an instant, his face turned green, and there was a hint of resentment in his eyes. Uncultured, how terrible! This group of survivors of the primordial era had obviously never seen a starry sky battleship. This was normal. There was no technological power in the primordial era at all. And this mysterious primordial era, although it had always existed, was only a fragment of the primordial era. After it was shattered in the unparalleled battle of the primordial era, it had been in exile. Being exiled in the boundless void was no different from being completely sealed off. Therefore, the survivors of the primordial era who lived in this broken world naturally could not come into contact with the outside world, so it was impossible for them to develop technological power. Under such circumstances, it was inevitable that they suddenly saw the void-breaking shuttle and subconsciously judged it to be a monster insect from its appearance. With the exclamations, these survivors of the primordial era quickly dispersed, vaguely forming a battle formation, and quickly surrounded the void-breaking shuttle. In fact, when they exclaimed, many of the survivors of the primordial era in the void not far behind them were alarmed and turned their heads to look. However, when they saw that the existence that had rushed out of the so-called abyss of sin was merely a strange insect that was less than 300 meters long, and there was already a group of more than 1,000 people from their own camp that had gone forward to form a battle formation, and were about to begin the hunt. Therefore, the other survivors of the primordial era, who were alarmed obviously did not take this matter to heart. Soon they turned their heads and put their attention back to the end of the starry sky hunt in front of them. It was obvious that the 1,000+ survivors of the primordial era that were charging towards the void-shattering shuttle in a battle formation weren't a threat to Yixian at all. Their cultivation strength was basically around the Void Realm and Genesis Realm, and there was not even a single one of them. The last 3 or 4 people were only in the 14th realm, which was the early or middle stage of the cosmic light realm. If Yixian wanted to, with just a raise of his hand, he would be able to easily suppress the 1,000 or so survivors of the primordial era that were charging forward and trying to surround and kill him. But he obviously would not do so. The reason why the other party rushed over so aggressively was just because of a misunderstanding. Yixian was a newcomer. On the one hand, he did not intend to make too many enemies, and on the other hand, he wanted to inquire about some information through these survivors of the primordial era. Besides, he had been flying alone in the dark void behind the huge light curtain for so long. He hadn't seen a living person for nearly 2 months. Now that he finally saw one, let alone a human, even if it was just an ugly space beast, he would still be able to see it. Now that he had finally seen one, not to mention that the other party was a human, even if it was just an ugly space beast, Yixian would feel that the other party was very friendly. With that thought, his figure flickered and directly swept out of the space-breaking shuttle, appearing in the void outside in the blink of an eye. Then, with a wave of his hand, He immediately kept the space-breaking shuttle in the undying world in his body. He did not want to leave it outside and be mistaken as a strange big bug and attacked by these people. This is SSS. Mahayana Realm. Oh no, something's wrong. That strange bug actually has a master, and it is actually the mount of a Mahayana Realm old monster. This is bad. Seeing Yixian suddenly appear and put away the void-shattering shuttle with a wave of his hand, the 1,000 or so survivors of the primordial era that had already formed a battle formation were first stunned, then their bodies abruptly stopped at the same time. Their expressions changed as they cried out in alarm. It was obvious that they were frightened by the universe-grade aura emanating from Yixian's body. Furthermore, they were quite frightened. At this moment there were soft exclamations, and many of them were even trembling. The so-called Mahayana realm obviously referred to the universe grade. However, the latter was the name of the three main planes of the starry sky, while this was a fragment of the primordial era that was completely sealed off. Naturally, the name of the cultivator's realm could not be the same as that of the three main planes of the starry sky. This was just a difference in the name, so Yixian did not bother to pay attention to it at all. When he saw that these people had all stopped in the void hundreds of thousands of miles away and were staring at him in horror, he could not help but smile bitterly and shake his head. Then, he directly cupped his fists and bowed slightly. He said loudly, "Fellow cultivators, this is my first time here and I don't know the way. May I know the name of this star domain?" The reason Yixian claimed that his surname was Qiao and that he had even thought of a single name, Feng, was because he had thought about it. Although he was the first powerhouse of the current era to rush through the huge light screen and enter this strange corner of the primordial era, it would not be long before the fleets of the various races of the second universe would arrive here one after another. After the news spread, the fleets of the human race, the myriad Luo Federation, and the other large forces and starry sky powerhouses from the first universe and the third universe